At 7:30. Apologies for the late start, but welcome everyone to this meeting of the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee. First item on the agenda is to receive apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Heath, Councillor Rigby, of which Councillor Coxall is substituting, Councillor Chukwa, Councillor Arnold is substituting for Councillor Day on Place ONS, because Councillor Day is sitting in his capacity as People Vice Chair. And we've also had apologies from Sue Hodgson, our co-opted member on Place Overview and Scrutiny.
Thank you, Matthew. Do any members have any apologies for other members? Councillor Kerrin.
Councillor Polston.
Thank you. Councillor Kent.
Councillors Fish and Councillor Cathy Kent.
Thank you. Any more? No, that's it. Thank you, everyone. So item 2 is to approve the minutes of the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny meeting on the 22nd of October. Are we happy to approve them? Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 3, urgent items. There are no urgent items of business. So that takes us to item 4. Are there any declarations of interest? Thank you. No declarations of interest. Okay, so we move on to the substantive business, which is item 5, draft revenue budget 2025-26 and MTFS strategy to 2028-29. Before we actually start the formal business, I'll just run through the process of how the meeting's going to proceed. I mean, I have to say I'm not going to run this meeting according to a script. I want it to be flexible, but it will loosely follow this pattern. So the Leader of the Council, Councillor Kent, will give an introduction and explain the savings approach that's been taken by Cabinet. He'll then be followed by Councillor Muldowney, who is the portfolio holder for finance. We'll then invite the Chief Executive Commissioner, Dr. Smith, to likewise present a contextual report and give any submissions he wants to the committee. He'll be followed by the Section 151 officer, and then we'll move through the slides. I think I'm right in saying that Cabinet members will give a very brief introduction to each of the savings relevant to their portfolio, and then obviously we'll open it up for questions and comments. I'm going to ask the chairs of the relevant committees to go first with any questions as we move through the areas that are under their remit, and then I'll open it up to all questions or comments from members. Is that clear? Any questions? Okay, so without further ado then, it's over to the Leader of the Council.
Ben, thank you. We moved to this system of having a joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee last year to go through the budget savings. I think it worked relatively well last year under the chairing of Councillor Martin Kerrin. Those of us who were here will remember that we ended up finishing at something like 20 to 1 in the morning. I hope, Chair, that you don't take that as a target. And I'm sure with your efficient chairing, we'll be able to finish much, much earlier than that. But I do want to say that I fundamentally believe in the importance of good scrutiny. Good scrutiny is essential as a tool to making sure that we make good decisions. So I am really looking forward to hearing the contributions of members across the chamber, their comments, their criticisms, their questions, and I would just ask that all members of all parties come forward and ask those questions without fear or favour, because that's the role. As I say, it's a role that I think is very, very important. I just want to say from the outset that, Chair, you've been involved for many years in setting budgets at this council, and you know as well as anybody else that these aren't things that are thrown together in the space of a fortnight. And there are a lot of people, officers and members, who have put an awful lot of work into the proposals that we have before us this evening. Cabinet has been through these proposals a number of times, both individually and collectively, and they are a set of proposals which all of us are agreed to. So for me, the mission of me and Cabinet from the day we took office has been to fundamentally reshape the way this council works, and in doing so to change the relationship between the council and our residents, our businesses and our partners. I think we have made huge steps in the last 5 or 6 months, but it can only be the beginning. There has been an incredible amount of work to secure the improvement and recovery of the council. And I appreciate the enormous amount of time and effort of Lynn Worrell as Deputy Leader in working on how the Council needs to transform. The work of Councillor Muldowney in reshaping the resources in the Council, Councillor Morris Cook in leading the charge to change the way that we engage with and involve our communities, and to each of our service portfolio holders, to Vicky Hartstein, to Victoria Holloway, Mark Hooper, Lee Watson, for the way they have led the change within children's, within adults and within place. And I also want to pay tribute to the ONS committees and their chairs and vice chairs for embracing their new and enhanced role. Chair, no amount of innovation and good leadership can lessen the impact of the Council's crippling debt, a debt that still stands at around £890 million. So balancing the budget, reducing the debt, making the Council financially sustainable is a responsibility and a duty on each and every one of us. And I recognise that none of us came into public life to make cuts and to face such difficult decisions as we face starting this evening. But that is the hand that we've been dealt. As I say, we have a duty to do the best we can for this Council. What we can do, and what we've done in coming up with the proposals that are before us this evening, is to stick to some core principles, principles that will uphold the values that I and my colleagues on Cabinet believe in. And that is that our residents have to come first. And in coming first, we do our very best to protect frontline services. That we will protect the most vulnerable, and that where we're making changes to services, that we minimise the adverse impacts of those changes on the daily lives of our residents, and that we tackle waste and inefficiency in the Council, streamline management and administration, and reduce bureaucracy. And that is what these budget proposals that we have before us this evening represent. They're an honest, forthright and focused set of actions to reduce costs, help to cut waste and protect those things that matter most to our residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. And Councillor Muldowney, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're all acutely aware of the financial challenges we face. For many of us, certainly on this side of the chamber, those challenges are not of our making, but still our responsibility to address. The proposals before you are not just a collection of figures. They represent a clear strategy rooted in what I hope are core values for all of us in this chamber, to stabilise the Council's finances while protecting the services that matter most to our residents. So I'm not here to tell you that these budget-saving proposals are perfect. No budget ever is. But I can tell you that they're honest, balanced and designed with care to limit the impact on those who rely on us the most. They reflect our commitment to protecting frontline services, to supporting the most vulnerable and tackling inefficiency and waste within the Council. On this side of the chamber, they reflect a shared determination to turn this Council's finances around without compromising the principles that we all believe in. I really want to commend the officers and portfolio holders who have worked tirelessly to craft these proposals. Achieving 18.2 million in savings whilst minimising harm to residents is no small feat. It has required innovation. It's required collaboration and leadership at every level. And I believe it shows what we can do when we all work together. But tonight is not just about commending what has been done. It's also about ensuring that we've got it right. That requires scrutiny. Scrutiny is not about political point scoring or taking easy shots ahead of an election. It's about asking tough, constructive questions to make these proposals better for our residents. It's about ensuring that every decision we make is grounded in fairness, sustainability and impact. So I urge my colleagues across the chamber to engage with the scrutiny process in the spirit it demands. Residents deserve better than divisive politics. They deserve leaders who take their responsibility seriously, who challenge ideas when necessary, and who contribute solutions where they can. Let's not fall into the trap of using this moment for political gain. Those days are over. Instead, let's rise to the occasion and demonstrate that we are united in our commitment to Thurrock and its people. I think it's true to say that none of us came into local politics to deliver these kind of budget savings. None of us would have chosen to do that. But this is what we need to do in order to move forward with the Council's recovery. I believe it's a solid foundation for recovery, a recovery that will take time, persistence and let's honour our responsibility to the residents who've put their trust in us by putting aside politics, engaging constructively and making these proposals the very best that they can be. Thank you.
Thank you. I, of course, embrace your comments, but what a difference a year makes. But you're quite right, we should all approach this in good spirit and make sure that we don't seek to make political capital out of this. We all represent our residents, and I'm sure the last thing they want to see us do is exploit this for political gain. And I'm sure certainly members on my side have heeded that, and I hope we can have a good-hearted, thorough meeting, which isn't, doesn't stray into some of the bad tempers that we saw last year. So, moving on, could I please invite the Chief Executive Commissioner, Dr. Smith, to say a few words?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I really want to just establish and set out and remind members about the nature of the intervention that the Council finds itself in, and ask members to keep this in mind in the approach that that we take tonight and indeed onwards into the budget setting process in total. Essentially, intervention is around three particular issues. One is is about good leadership. The second is about good governance, and of course the third is about financial sustainability of the Council. In both the best value inspection and indeed the directions from the Secretary of State, those issues have remained at the forefront of the action that's been taken. Leadership is not simply about a hierarchy, about an executive. It's about the responsibility and accountability of all of us to ensure that the Council is capable in all those senses to represent the best interests of Thurrock people, to prioritise those interests and to take its actions wisely to ensure it uses public money well. It's about effective governance that ensures the proper checks and balances are used in the Council, both to develop policy, develop our proposals around the budget, and to test those about whether they are in fact the best options for the Council. And thirdly, it's about the finances themselves. This Council has made, in the judgment of all commissioners, has made a tremendous amount of progress since intervention took place in September 23. But that should not mask the extent of the journey yet to be undertaken. The Council's finances are in a perilous position, and we are literally living hand to mouth, making all sorts of very difficult judgments, sometimes very frustrating ones, about what we can and can't spend on a day-to-day level. And we're having to do that not because anyone chooses to, but because it's so difficult to find a way through the finances on a day-to-day, month-by-month, year-by-year basis. This is the second of the most significant years of budget reductions. So last year, the Council agreed £20 million of reductions. This year, for next year's budget, it has to agree £18.2 million worth of reductions. And then in the following 3 years after that, it's got another 40 million to find. These are never going to be easy processes. And there are always, of course, competing options, competing priorities. and that's the proper meat and drink of politics. But what is not proper is for any member to have a view that the alternative is a status quo, is not finding the savings. Any change to the plan means something else has to go. And as long as we understand those are choices that this council has to make, that the real legitimate choice is one saving or another, but it has to be made, then the council can demonstrate the effectiveness of both its leadership and its governance in the decisions that it's being asked to make. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. And lastly then, the Section 151 officer. Would you like to say a few words? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. The Council is deep into the work to update its medium-term financial strategy. A key part of this strategy is the identification of proposals to achieve the Council's savings target of £18.2 million for 25-26, hence the focus of this evening's meeting. The draft budget for 25-26 and the draft 3-year MTFS strategy will be presented to Cabinet in December. It will include a full update of the financial strategies underpinning the MTFS, and I will be recommending to the Cabinet in December to refer this report, the draft budget and MTFS report, to the Corporate ONS Committee in January. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Okay, so everybody should have the slides before them, which include all the savings that we're going to discuss tonight. And the first savings relate to adults and health, and they begin on page 3 and go to page 17. So could I just invite Councillor Hooper to say a few words and introduce his savings before we move to comments, questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, you've all had a copy of the report, and I think the best thing to do, and I assume you've read it, is just to take questions. The Council's approach is really to try and empower people and give them independence, and this approach, I think, will be very favourable in terms of how we manage our budgets.
Thank you. So first of all, I'm going to ask Councillor Spade, as a relevant Overview and Scrutiny Committee Chair, whether he has any questions, either to Councillor Hooper or the Director.
Thank you, Chair. I personally have no questions about the document that is put in front of us this evening. What I do have questions about is the validity of this process and the fact that members were given access to this information 7 days ago. The People Overview and Scrutiny Committee met last night when we had an opportunity to discuss it, which was 6 days after these figures were brought into the public domain. Quite frankly, I don't think that's enough time. The members of that committee, virtually to a man or a woman, work. They've got a lot of time to commit to other things, and to ask them to scrutinise and study a document of this nature, I think 6 days is just not acceptable. But that may be a personal opinion. I also question the validity of some of the things that have just been said by colleagues opposite. Not least because I know for a fact, because they told me, that the senior management of the ruling group at the moment are trying desperately to negotiate a change with government and seeking a reduction in the debt level, the debt repayments that we have to make. And I find it to be quite hypocritical that they can sit here and say, this is what we've got on the table and this is what we have to do, and these are the figures that we've got to look at, when at the same time they are trying to actually get those figures changed. So I think it's a degree of hypocrisy there that I don't like to see. And I know for a fact that they were making the same hypocritical allegations against the previous administration 12 months ago. So, and they keep talking about taking politics out of the process of governance in this council, and I actually don't think that they do that. But that is, again, a personal opinion. I also find that there's been a degree of an attempt to sanitise this process. And yes, we did stay till 12:30 or whatever it was last year. But the irony is, afterwards, everybody that I spoke to thought it was one of the best council meetings that we'd had, where opinions were honestly aired and time wasn't an issue and everybody got to the bottom of everything that they wanted to ask. Here, we've been asked to sanitise what we do. Chairs were asked to give the answers to the questions. To ask the questions that have been asked by members. To the credit of the chair of this meeting, he has said in a pre-meeting we had earlier on that he's happy to take them from the members who wish to ask them. I do understand the process of trying to avoid duplication. That is sensible. But again, I have a real feeling that we're being pushed down a barrier towards an outcome that's already decided. And yet, which we all know, is still very much a matter in the balance. We only have to know anybody who switched on the BBC News this morning saw that there'd been an increase in the core rate of inflation of around 0.6%. So it could well be by the time that we get to the implementation of this budget that we're in a completely different sphere anyway. But that is always going to be the case with any budget. I just think this process has not been well thought out. I think people have been backed into corners, and I'm personally quite disappointed. I think we should have had far more notice, far more opportunity to research, far more opportunity to ask pertinent questions that officers would have time to look into and ask rather than the short questions. Ironically, one of the members of our committee has some questions, but actually received an answer by email this afternoon, presumably in the hope that we didn't ask that question in the public domain. And I just think that's wrong. Having said that, that's me going to shut up. I've got no personal questions. If any members of the committee have any questions, then please feel free to raise your hand and ask them, if that's okay with the chair.
It is, and some of the points you raise I do wholeheartedly agree with. I will just say I think we have had enough pre-meetings. I've certainly given my views on the process. I think it's probably better that if other members have got those kind of concerns, we do it outside of this evening, because we are working to a strict timeline. Well, no, we're not working to a strict timeline. I said, I'm going to be flexible, but either way, we've got a lot of information to get through. So we do need to concentrate on the savings, but that's not to say that a lot of your comments are noted, and I agree, and we have to reflect on this year to make sure it's more fine-tuned next year. But Councillor Kent, did you want to
just to respond to some of that, and I take it in the spirit that it was meant. Firstly, on the process, the process is the process. The papers were published with the normal degree of time as to any other committee. On the bit about debt, I think we have to remember that the council has two issues which are linked but separate. One is that high level of debt that is a kind of an anchor around us. And the second is the overspending on the budget, the day-to-day spending. Now, that incredibly high level of debt is almost unique to Thurrock. The day-to-day overspending isn't unique to Thurrock. It's an issue that councils up and down the country are juggling with. And what we need to do tonight is to look at the savings proposals that we have, which are the first step of bringing that budget back under control and getting that day-to-day spending under control. And as far as I'm concerned, and as far as Cabinet colleagues are concerned, if we want to stay here till midnight, we want to stay here till 1 o'clock until everybody's satisfied and everybody's had their say, then we are more than happy and more than willing to do that.
Okay, we're going to move on to the savings now. So are there any... I'm going to throw it open to all members. I'm not going to do it on a committee-by-committee basis. So are there any questions or comments or any contributions that ONS members want to make at all? Okay. Councillor Cockshaw, I think, was first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor, for the introduction on these, and I appreciate some of these are actually savings recurring from last year in some of the in terms of where we're actually going wider. I think it's just I was mostly looking at proposal number 7. Obviously, I appreciate what we're doing in terms of integrated locality model and how we are actually trying to change our adult social care services as well with our health partners and how we deliver that. I'm just mindful it's a very large figure of 1.677 million, and it's appreciate we want to work flexibly and changing how we provide our solutions. That's a very large figure with little added bonus at the end saying specific savings breakdown will be assigned through implementation. It sounds very, I don't want to say that we're bringing up false hope of a lot, we're aiming for this figure, but it partly does, I think, appreciate that we're relying on the NHS helping out as well, doing its part. We're relying on providers of services we work with actually doing their part as well, and I appreciate with national insurance rises, inflation rises as well, some of those costs may change. How confident really are you in that 1.67 million figure, because it is a big part to say as a saving, that we then, how confident are you actually getting to that figure per se?
In answering that question, I noticed that that figure is quite precise. Could you also answer two questions at once? Could you just give an explanation of how we've arrived specifically at that figure?
Yeah, I'll try. So the target is a significant figure. You must remember in adult social care, fundamentally there is one budget, it's the community care budget. And most of the savings, except for some commissioning savings, will be driven from that budget. How we've cut the figures up is to apportion them to the areas that we think have delivered this year and the scale of the opportunity we've got for next year. So to give you a bit of assurance around this particular stream, if you were to look at our performance on our budget in this financial year, we are doing really well on our budget. That is largely driven by this area of work. And we know that we've got more potential. Now that I can't give you specific figures against specific elements, what I can do is commit to making the overarching saving, because what we're doing is through the locality working, we're identifying people earlier, and so we're working on trying to get people an upstream prevention to a much earlier stage, so that what we can do is we can hopefully have a higher percentage proportion of people that we can provide advice and information to, which supports them to maintain their independence and not have to go through into a costed service. The other key bit around locality working, and Councillor Coxhill, you're absolutely correct, it is around multidisciplinary working and the benefits of working not just with the NHS, but it's actually with our voluntary sector community organisations who really understand the local assets within communities. So we're looking from a very person-centred point of view to try and see whether we can meet people's needs through assets that exist within the community, which we call community asset-based approach, and then strength-based approaches, which is working within your own family networks to try and keep you away from costed services, which generally do not give you the best independence and well-being outcomes. And so this earlier intervention, this way of looking at different opportunities within the communities and working across the NHS and voluntary sector organisations in a much more community-based way, means that we are seeing significant achievement of efficiencies and savings in this financial year, and we believe that we've got further progress to make on that as we go through next year. So I'm not going to commit to a figure down against each element, but what I'm prepared to commit to is that we've been through this within the directorate in great detail, and we can commit to the overarching figure of 5.3 million as the target for the directorate, and this being a key element of how we'll deliver it.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Coxhill?
Thank you. Just thanks for that, Rob. I completely appreciate seeing the figures last year myself and going through the saving proposals. Actually, where the benefits of where we get to that figure. I know myself when I was speaking with your predecessor, we were looking very closely, thinking how much more there is to squeeze out of it. And I'm just mindful we don't want to keep squeezing it and over-promising. So if you feel like you are confident we can get to that figure, appreciate at the moment we're looking at £1 million underspend from last quarter. So there is that room there in the directorate. So I welcome that in terms of where we are. Just, if you may, Chair, just quickly bounce on slightly if I follow up with a question.
You can. Just before we do, can we take it that when questions are being asked, unless the question is specifically asked the director to answer, can we assume that the question is to the portfolio holder, and if they want to defer to the relevant director, then fine, but we should really be questioning portfolio holders, but obviously if they need to defer or an officer wants to make a contribution, that's fine.
Yep, thank you, Chair. And just one follow-up question later on, where we're looking at review of management structure, reducing cost by 10 to 30% calculates about £500,000. And that's mostly looking at ensuring that contributions releasing grant funding is overused in line with so the impact it may have on grant-funded roles, but then where is that exactly? Are we looking, it's post-deletion, or are we looking at just merging posts, or where is the director trying to go to get that 10 to 30%?
Thank you, Councillor. I think there's still work to do on here, actually. The target is to actually do that. I don't really want to go into the detail of that because I don't want staff to think that publicly the particular post is at risk. But what we are doing is we're going away looking at the detail of that, and I think it's only fair we speak to those staff that may be affected before we go into any kind of public discussion.
Thank you. Next was Councillor Howden.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Councillor Hooper. The saving proposal on adult social care, you're talking about maximising Care Act review to basically go over overspends in over-prescribing care, which I get. We shouldn't be paying for levels of care that residents don't need because it institutionalises them and it's wasteful. But separately in the proposal, you're talking about the eligibility. Those are two different things. It's the eligibility to access care, and if you overprescribe in care when they're already there. Those are two separate issues. So I'm just wondering, when you're talking about maximising a Care Act review, are you talking about overprescribing people already in the system, or are you talking about tightening the eligibility criteria to try and prevent certain people entering the system?
We're not looking at stopping people entering the system. The criteria is what the criteria is. So we're not playing with that. It's actually looking at people who have been on particular care packages for a long time that they may not actually need. Or we're looking at ways of enabling people to be more independent of actually receiving care. And I think that's a really, really positive approach.
So no changes to the eligibility criteria. That's extremely helpful, thank you. In terms of the risks and mitigations you put in place, you've listed an unexpected increase in demand. When patients are overprescribed care, it's often the case they become, to a degree, slightly institutionalised and slightly reliant on the care, even if they didn't initially need the care. Do you not think there's a risk in the savings proposal that if you withdraw a level of care that they didn't primarily need for their concern, but they've come to rely on it, that could in fact cause an escalation in their condition?
That is a potential risk, but if it's done properly, and I think we need to do this in consultation with the people that we're assessing, it's not just we come to assessing, we're cutting your money, it's actually working with those people to look at how they can actually be more independent and take greater control.
Sorry, one more, Chair. Thank you, that's very helpful. And finally, in terms of the aggregate placement budget, pretty much every year since I've been a member, that's 15 years now, I've always been told by various DASs that we are kind of at the point in the social care budget, because we are such a lean authority, that we are at the point of very nearly not being able to run a safe service because we are so lean. Have you actually been given a golden figure, because I certainly wasn't when I was the cabinet member, of how much we actually require to run that statutory service? Because I'm low-key concerned that we have been told every year for almost 15 years now that we are almost at the point the social care budget is too lean, and it's never actually been quantified to me what too lean actually is. There must be you're smiling here, there must be a red line financial point.
I guess red line financial point is when we're not meeting people's needs. We still have to meet people's needs. But look, I think you are right. We have one of the leanest budgets in social care as a council in this country. However, I think the approach we've taken as a council by actually preventing people needing services has been horrendously positive. What this budget really looks a lot more at is about people who are in the system, who are receiving services. Are we disabling them by providing them to all the wrong type of care? The care system today has got far better in terms of using technology, which we're not using enough of. So I think this is an opportunity where we can actually continue to look at improving the quality of services and a person-centred approach, working alongside the people we are caring and supporting with, and get better value for money. Do I have a figure? No, Councillor, I don't.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson next, and then Councillor Arnold. Mrs. Arnold.
Chair, but I might as well have a go while I'm here, mightn't I? There's a question I'm going to ask that's not on any of these papers, which it surprised me, because a paper was produced at the People Overview and Scrutiny, not last night, but the recent before, on the Q1 finance. And it mentioned something around £3 million estimation of income lost through COVID that we could claim back from the government. And just a little snippet on the bottom of it, it said £1.2 million of it was an overestimation. But not to worry, we've got money in the funds to cover it. I asked then for it to be broken down. I was hoping that it would come to the People Overview and Scrutiny last night. It didn't. I was hoping it might be here. It isn't. I don't really know what portfolio I'm asking it to. I would imagine, Councillor Hooper, the fact that it was produced at People, it must come under yours, or maybe Councillor Hartstein, I don't know, but it's a question that I would like answered, please, because that's almost 7% of the total savings, £1.2 million overestimation.
I mean, I think you're conflating a couple of things here, Councillor Johnson. If you're talking about the Q1 figures, that's a completely different situation to what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about savings proposals, which are in this pack. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but I think it's the COVID. It was a grant that was overclaimed whilst your administration was in power. So some of it has had to be paid back. But that we're talking about this year's budget. We're not. It's a completely different thing. I don't know if you'd like to say some more, Dawn.
Can I come back on that, Chair? Sorry.
I think briefly, yeah. I mean, we do have to stick to the savings proposals, but again, it's another very pertinent point which I don't think has been properly answered, and I think the best place probably is an answer to the relevant committee. But just want to come back briefly on that, and then we'll seek to move on.
You're telling me it has been paid back. The report said to me it might have to be paid back. So once again, I don't know where we are. And it's £1.2 million, which, as I said, is roughly 7% of the savings you've had to make. Are we paying it back? Do we have to pay it back? Where was it made? And where are we taking the £1.2 million from in case it does have to get paid back?
Yeah, if you could give a brief answer.
Yes, of course.
And if that, I think, doesn't satisfy, then we can take, well, it's not for me to take away, but officers can provide a proper response to not only Councillor Johnson, but the relevant committee, bearing in mind that it has been raised there without a satisfactory answer.
Thank you, Chair. So the grant that you're referring to is the COVID sales fees and charges grant that applies across the organisation. It was a grant that was received during the period of COVID where the council could claim for its sales fees and charges. The council did receive too much of that grant, and we do have to pay an element of that grant back. We are being transparent in the report and explaining that. The way that we are going to fund that grant, and once again, we are being transparent in the report. We have a level of business rates that was not put into the budget last year, and so we are going to use that funding. In terms of, we are expecting the government to claim that grant money back from us, because we have submitted our final claims and we are waiting for that request for the funding to come back.
Thank you. As I said, I think if there are any further questions or any further scrutiny of that, I think it can be done via the relevant committee. Councillor Spate, you've indicated.
Sorry, I didn't wish to get involved in this and whatever, but I go back to what I said when I addressed the chamber earlier on. We're being pushed into a situation this evening to make massively important decisions about the future of our borough, about the fiscal foundations of the next 12 months. And far be, much as Councillor Johnson and I disagree on so many things, last night he expected to get a really important answer about a significant amount of money. He didn't get it. He has had they've had the opportunity today to give him the answer to the question. He clearly hasn't received it. You know, I'm getting sick to death of being sanitised and told, you know, you're the decision makers, you do this, that and the other, you're really important councillors, but actually you're not giving us the information we need to make these massively important decisions. And we're not talking about pennies here. You know, and I just ask the senior leadership team of this council to start to treat councillors with some respect, answer our questions, give us honest answers, and please do not fudge the issue like you just did.
Thank you. I understand some of the sentiment around this because I also asked a similar question at corporate ONS, and I think there's a universal feeling that we haven't had a satisfactory answer, but we're not going to probe that any further here. Can we take this outside of the committee and make sure that once and for all members get a satisfactory response? Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Chair. 2 points, really. I do fully appreciate this is the proposals and it's the top line of information about those proposals. I suppose I wanted a bit of reassurance that we would again be having that extraordinary meeting where we get the more detailed business cases behind this to really scrutinise, because I don't think from the headlines we can do this full justice, as has already been commented. One of the things that I don't see within the proposals is about correct cross-charging to people like the NHS, where the council have admitted in the past we haven't really been very good at making sure that parts of their job that we've been doing, we make sure we get funded for them. One of the things that came up in the previous budget was that there was £300,000 just in cross-charging that hadn't been cross-charged on the Thurrock First and how that was run. So I suppose my question is, was that ever recovered, that 300,000? Has that already been put in to the figures before the final figure of what efficiencies we need has been calculated? And going forward, I know that Alex McCann has been doing a lot of work about looking at where we haven't charged for the cross-charging and where we could. Where are we on that? And what do you think other savings from that would be?
Okay. The honest answer is I'll come back to you, Councillor, regarding the savings from the NHS, because I don't have that figure to hand in terms of getting some. I know we got some, but I can't remember the actual figure, so I will come back to you on that. In terms of this, the cross-charging, I think there's some work in here that actually looks at some of the cross-charging. I don't know if you want to say any more about that at all.
So just to say two things. There is a lot in the integrated locality teams, the multidisciplinary working. There is a whole range of arrangements around posts funded by the NHS or by the council, how we're working together. As far as the cross-charging specifically, there are a number of posts within the Better Care Fund. So there are posts, so the Better Care Fund has got 3 columns. It's got a range of projects and lines. It's got projects which are funded by the NHS, projects which are funded by the council, and projects which are jointly funded. But the whole pot is joint. And a lot of the Better Care Fund is funding posts. So a lot of that takes place in the Better Care Fund, which is currently, we're going through a review of that at the moment to check it's fit for purpose, because it would need to be signed off by the Health and Wellbeing Board next year. So that's where those cross-charging of posts would most be seen within the Better Care Fund reporting.
Do you want to come back, Councillor Arnold? Yeah.
It was just to say, Councillor Hooper, if you'd like a bigger conversation about what I've just been saying about, and I'd really appreciate if I could maybe speak with Alex as well, so because she probably understands where I'm coming from, because I don't know, perhaps we can have a wider conversation, because I don't quite think we're talking on the same lines here.
Thank you. Councillor Abbas, did you have a question or a comment?
Thank you. Just a clarification and concern. The leader did mention cutting bureaucracy, and even in this report, it says avoiding unnecessary costs. So obviously, we have noted some savings from vacant posts, but at the same time, we are spending 300K to hire 5 staff members to facilitate these savings. So how will you justify these costs?
One of the things we're not doing very well at is actually, one, assessing our staff, or two, having the right staff in place to enable assessments to take place around fitting aids and adaptations. So the recruitment of these staff will actually be it will more than pay for itself by the fact we have achieved the staff to deliver the savings that we're talking about.
Does that answer your question?
Not really, but why do we need 5 staff members when we can identify these savings? Because this is about making efficient decisions, making sure we have clear strategy and we know what we are going to do. But if we know the figures, how we are going to cut these corners, and we know we are impacting these front line services, so why do we need 5 staff members spending 300K just to facilitate these savings? To me, this is really a matter of concern.
So if I can answer that. So the post, it's to do with requiring specialist posts to to achieve the savings. So some of them sit in the realm of occupational therapy, because you need specialist staff that can go and do assessments to then identify the equipment and the adaptations that may be required, which help cost avoidance of more expensive intervention packages. The other side is linked to the reablement model, that we need the staff with the right skills to increase our reablement service, for which there is an increasing demand for. And that's, again, a very cost-effective investment, because all the national guidance suggests that for every 100 people that go into a reablement service, best practice would be that after a 6 to 8 week period of reablement, 40% or so would have no ongoing need for any home care package, because they've been supported to maximise or optimise their independence in that period. Another 30 or 40% will have a reduced care package need from what would have happened if they hadn't had reablement, and there'll be about 20-25% that would continue to have an intensive package because their needs are just so severe. So obviously, when you ramp that up into the numbers, it's a good investment to have the right skills to be able to deliver the service which achieve the cost avoidance in the longer term.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from members? Okay, thank you. Just I'm mindful of time, but just a few from me very quickly. I'm looking at AHS04, where my reading of this might be wrong, but we're talking about a reduction in posts and hours provided due to largely those services being outsourced. If they're being outsourced, presumably we still have to pay for whoever now provides those services. Is there not an offset to that saving by virtue of the fact they're now being outsourced? Perhaps if Councillor Hooper could answer that, then obviously if the Director has any contribution.
I have to apologise. I was talking to Robert, so I didn't quite catch your full question, so I apologise for that. So could you just repeat the question?
Well, I think Robert may have heard it, so for the sake of time, did you want to answer that? Was I clear in my question?
Are you asking about the caring for Thurrock?
Yes, in a nutshell, the way I've read that is that a large chunk of that saving has arisen because the services that we were providing are now outsourced. Well, if they're outsourced, I'm assuming we still have to pay for them.
We will sorry, Chair. We will continue to provide an in-house and a home care service, but the transformation that we are wanting to take forward is that our in-house service will reduce in size, but to become more specialist, because it becomes the specialist reablement service. Those people that we currently support in our in-house service who are just receiving the standard ongoing home care service, they will be taken on board by the new home care contracts, which start in April next year, which is just the recommissioning of the home care service which we've always had, which is provided by external providers. So it's not a question. So that's really the answer. The new service will be able to pick up those traditional home care recipients of service, and our service is being redesigned to really focus on the reablement to provide the benefits which I was addressing in my answer to Councillor Abbas.
Thank you. And AHS 11, £500,000 saving. It does say this in the report, but it's a very temporary saving, which we're going to have to look at refunding in the very near term. In past years, we set budgets on a year-to-year basis. We have to make the budget fit for that year. But in terms of sustainability, which is, bearing in mind the situation the council is in, we're looking at trying to forge budgets which, for the long term, put us on a sustainable footing. That doesn't sit very well with that, and I just wanted your comments. Really, is it a risky policy to take this size of saving, which we know is very likely, almost certain, to represent itself as a pressure in the very near future?
I do take your point, actually, Chair, but we'll be carrying out a better fund review over the next 12 months, which I think will actually offset the budgets in the future. So it is a one-off, but we are looking at other ways of making up that £500,000 shortfall. Okay,
and I'm sure the relevant committee, the ONS committee, hears that and will want to probe that as we move towards a budget, because as I say, £500,000 is not an insignificant amount. I think we'll be looking for assurances as to how you're going to offset that pressure in future years.
That's a very fair challenge.
Thank you. And just an observation generally. I mean, obviously adults and health are bearing the brunt, I think, of the savings. A lot of these savings are all based on other things falling into place. And it seems to me some of them are quite high risk. Again, the report, the slides tell us that some of these savings will only be realised if X, Y, or Z happens. How sure are you that it's a huge chunk of the overall savings falls in adults and health? Can you please give us, and I know you can't say, yes, we're going to hit every penny, we're going to save every pound that we've identified here. That's impossible. But how sure are you that these proposals are realistic, bearing in mind there are so many other factors that have to fall into place for them to be realistic?
Right, most of these savings are about reablement. There is lots of research looking at how other local authorities, I think Thurrock is, in terms of reablement, is slightly behind the times of other local authorities. I've worked in health and social care 39 years ago, and we were doing, over 39 years, not 39 years ago, but some of the things that we were doing in other local authorities, we're kind of stepping up to do now. And there's actually very, very strong evidence that these savings are actually achievable.
Thank you for that answer. Okay, are there any final questions before we move on to the next slides? No, thank you. So, okay, the next slides then relate to children's services, and they can be found on pages 18 to 23. Councillor Hartstein, did you want to say a few words in introducing these?
Thank you, Chair. Yep, just to say thank you that there are 5 proposals. I think they're all quite self-evident in terms of in the slides, and obviously open to questions. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Spate, did you want to lead with any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question on behalf of a colleague relating to the first item, home to school transport. We haven't had the benefit of seeing Q2 forecast, which is very relevant to this item in front of us in relation to home to school transport. So I would like to know, on behalf of colleague, would like to know if it looks likely that we're going to accomplish the planned saving in the first quarter of operation of the new home to school transport system. Hopefully we are, and hopefully there has been no impact on the quality of service that we offer to our children and their families and to our local schools. And assuming we have that assurance that we're on track with this scheme, then hopefully we should be able to deliver this predicted saving. But clearly we've already had a few weeks, a couple of months of seeing how it's gone, and hopefully they'll be able to get some, or my colleague will be able to get some comfort from the answer.
Thank you. Councillor Hartstein.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we are. Yep.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Spate? I think we could probably do better than that. Can we give him a more fulsome answer on that, please?
Sorry, just, are we on for saving? Yes, we are on for making the savings. Yes.
And the quality of service?
Yes, all is good. There were obviously a few issues to iron out at the start, but they have all been sorted out, so, and I've been keeping an eye on it.
Okay, are there any further questions from you, Councillor Spate?
Not from myself, but I believe colleagues have.
Okay, over to other members then. Councillor Caron.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hartstein, just looking at these figures, whenever children are mentioned at all, it always makes me think of what might be behind the surface or whatever. I just wonder if behind any of these figures involve any cuts to frontline social workers.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. No, there are no cuts, obviously, to frontline social workers. Just to say, obviously, we recognise the importance of frontline social workers and the role that they play. The cuts that are being, the proposals that we are putting in place are around demand management and streamlining services. So we can categorically assure that there are no cuts to frontline services, frontline social workers. Thank you.
Councillor Abbas.
Thank you, Chair. Just a clarification on inflation in contracts, home to school. You did mention they would be fixed for 2 years, and then it may be adjusted to CPI inflation. So when it will be adjusted by CPI inflation, so does this mean, including these previous 2 years, that would be from that year onward?
Oh, okay, I lost. Yep. No, it's fixed, definitely fixed for the first 2 years, so there will be no rise, no inflation. It's been built in, and then from 2 years after that, perhaps, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Howden, do you have a question?
Thanks, Chair. Hello, Councillor Hartstein. Could you just explain the process that you'll go through with the, in regards to looked after children placements, the process that you'll go through in terms of verifying to make sure you're happy with the suggestions that Empower make with regards to the 3 strands that they'll be looking into?
Certainly, thank you. Thank you, Councillor. So obviously, Empower, the company that's being used at the moment, they have been in about 30 other local authorities. So I've been assured that the Children's Services undertook quality assurance and contacted the local services before that. Obviously, they're looking at bringing in 4-to-1 savings. So in terms of the money that the outlay for it, it's going to bring back in, which is how they got the 768 across the 2. I'm just going to ask whether the director wants to bring in there with some technical information around the actual proposals.
Yeah, so what Empower are bringing to us is one, capacity. So there's additional support within the service by experienced professionals in looked after children placements. They're also bringing in a model that they have tried and tested in other local authorities called Valuing Care. And what that involves is looking at needs assessment of every single child that we have in placements. We're doing the first 100, looking mainly at adolescents up. So there'll be a reassessment of all our children to make sure their needs are being met. And for children who we can come up with another option for them, whether that be returning to family, whether that be kinship arrangements, whether that be into foster care or providing additional support where they are, that we'll put that in place. They're also doing some work on us around our recruitment and retention of foster carers. So it's about how do we make sure we already value our foster carers, but is there anything else we can do to encourage our foster carers, one, to stay with us, but to also take on different types of placement. So additional supports we can offer so that they can take on perhaps children with higher level needs. So all in all, they're actually doing quite a lot of work with us. They're already started, so this has already begun, and they'll be finished, I think, it's about February, March time. We will then embed the work that they're doing with us. So it's not about just doing it for a few months and then Empower go. I've certainly discussed with authorities across the Eastern region that have already introduced this, and it is a step change and a culture change about how we think about our needs, and it is about making sure our children have their needs met and that they're in the best placements for them.
Thank you very much. The specific question I had was how you verify that you're content with the recommendations that Empower are making. So very specifically, reunification policy, you specifically said that, the litmus test will be if reunification is safe. Frequently, you can tick the box that reunification is a safe prospect by ensuring that child will be reunited with a family, therefore not in the system, and that child is safe. Reunification can also be judged from the point of view that putting a child back into a safe environment is not a guarantee that that child is being ensured that they're going to school, that that child is having other pastoral needs met. So my question regarding reunification is, once Empower give you their assessment and they start saying, here are the following cases where we think reunification is possible, and here are the areas in which we think reunification with the following families would be perfectly safe, what process will you then go through to say it's not just about whether or not the child is physically in a safe environment, it's whether or not that child is in an environment that, as you said, Sheila, actually meets their needs? Because safe and having their needs met are different things fundamentally.
Thanks, James. I suppose what I haven't been clear about is all of our looked after children still have an allocated social worker. We're still subject to all the regulations that we would normally be, which includes having an independent reviewing officer for all of our looked after children. We do statutory reviews every 3 months, 6 months and 6 months. All of that will continue. So even if Empower come up with a plan, if our IROs, for example, say, but actually that plan doesn't include the mental health services that they need, for example, or the school's not right, or the school's not set up now, we wouldn't implement that until we had everything in place. And the social workers are the statutory officers who are responsible for the care for those looked after children. We have a whole raft of systems which involve team managers, external scrutiny. So this is about trying to help us hone in on those children where we could meet their needs differently. But until we have everything in place, there are so many regulatory and systems in place that remain in place, and they will stay in place long after Empower have gone.
Thanks, that's reassuring. So just to confirm, if Empower identified a suite of cases where you think reunification is possible, and Empower said, because we can drop your caseload by X, you require less capacity from IROs, you would keep the current capacity we've got for independent reviewing officers where it is, to ensure that's essentially a backstop to ensure that those reunification processes are monitored for the quality for the child.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Just a point to note, I think, at this point. Obviously, our primary function here as ONS committee members is to ask questions, but we're also able to make recommendations. So as we move through this process, if there are any savings that we think we need to make recommendations to Cabinet over, whatever that might be, then let's hear it from committee members. If we're really not happy about something, or we think there's an alternative, then just hold in mind, members, that obviously we can members can propose recommendations and we can vote on them. Corporate ONS members can vote on them probably at the end of the meeting or at some stage during the meeting. The next is Councillor Hurrell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask the portfolio holder, CS03 and 04, looked after children. With these savings proposals, can I ask for reassurance that no negative impact there will be no negative impact to looked after children at all, please?
Yep, certainly. Thank you, Councillor. No, as I mentioned earlier, firstly, in terms of frontline social workers, we're not looking at making any changes to frontline social workers. And as Sheila's already outlined, all the processes, certainly when Empower in place, all the processes, the normal statutory processes that are in place will continue to carry on. And obviously, you know, looked after children are, the process that are in place are statutory, so nothing will change on that front. We're not looking at making changes that will leave our most vulnerable children at risk, most definitely not. We would never do that.
Councillor Fletcher, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor, CS05 I'm interested in particularly. The streamlining of the children's services management. I'm going to assume that by streamlining we mean fewer bodies. So if you bear that one in mind for the moment. My main concern and the question that I want to ask is, we have as a council in the past suffered from senior leaders having too wide a span of control. It affects decision making. I think good decision making is clearly one of the most important things that we're going to need going forward. So how, in carrying out this review, are you going to make sure that we don't end up in a situation where people are starting to get too wide a span of control to do justice to?
Thank you, Councillor. Spans of control is something that I have sat and discussed with Director of Children's Services and the Assistant Director as well. In terms of streamlining management, we have looked at spans of control, and I can assure you that any changes that are made won't change what we have across the local authority in terms of numbers with that spans of control. But they definitely will not be expanding and going beyond what we feel is safe. Definitely not.
Thank you. So do I understand by that that there isn't necessarily, streamlining won't necessarily mean fewer people in senior leadership roles?
There will be post-deletions, possibly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor D. Arnold next.
Thank you, Chair. My question was going to be around step down from residential care and reunification with families, but Sheila answered it fully and reassured me fully when she was talking to Councillor Haldon.
Thank you. Councillor Leakey.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on CS03, on placements. It states that children's homes have been identified to support caregivers. So my question is, what's the time scale for the refurbishment of the children's home, and when will this take off? And the next question is, how many people, how many individuals will be contained in each home when this take off?
Sorry, Councillor. Could you just repeat the first question again? Sorry, did you say, was it timescales, did you say? Yes.
For the children's home to take off.
Yep, certainly, no problem. Was that 3 or was it? Oh, it's 3. It is 3, yeah, sorry. Oh, is it 3 or 4? No. Was it for the children's homes? That's
yes.
4, sorry, that's 4, yeah, CSO 4. Yeah, so obviously the properties have been identified and the costs have been released. We're just waiting now for them to go through to be refurbished in terms of bringing them up to Ofsted standards. So as soon as those properties can be refurbished and Ofsted is satisfied that they are up to standards, then we will certainly be bringing that in terms of starting and opening those up as the children's homes. In terms of placements, I'm under the impression that for the young people who've left care, that was 5 young people who would be placed there. And I believe, I'm just going to turn to Sheila for the first one. I think it was 2 or 3, but I'll turn to Sheila.
Yeah, so for the children's home, it's a maximum of 2 children. It's likely to probably be 1 solo placement, but if that solo placement is going well and we've got the room for it, we could increase to 2, but we're going to start off with 1, and it will be no more than 2 children in those placements. And you're correct that it's 5 in the other, which is the aftercare, and they're 18 plus young people, so they're young adults. So there'll be 5, and we've already signed a contract for 1 of those placements, and then we're looking, if that works out well, we'll be looking at more contracts for those young people that we have in our care.
In terms of time scale, when do we expect to, start putting those in place? In terms of time scale.
So in terms of the children's home, we've had the agreement now for the funding to get the property up to Ofsted standards. So it's about fire doors and things like that. We are just waiting. With the properties via our housing department, we're waiting for MEAs to come in and do that work. So it's literally as soon as they can come in and do that work, we'll be able to start using that placement. The one for the care leavers who are 18 plus. So we've already signed a contract for that first one, and we've identified the first 5 young people that will go into that placement, and that should be happening in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Thank you. My next question is on Empower. I was just wondering whether the social workers and Empower, are they duplicating services in terms of the frontline service? How that will affect social work roles?
Thank you, Councillor. So did you say, will it affect the number of frontline social worker roles?
Social workers, because if you bring in Empower, would that be duplicating services, social workers and Empower? How will it look like?
Sorry, I think it's the acoustics over here. Sorry about that. So is it you're saying how it's working for social workers with Empower?
Yes.
Okay. Just so I can expand a little bit on what I've said to James. So Empower have been brought in to help us develop a different way of working and to introduce a new model of working. And the Empower people have got capacity that's all they're doing. Our social workers are working alongside them, and our team managers. They've all been on training, and they've been doing that training. They've started that training, and that will continue up to Christmas. All the statutory responsibilities, and Empower will not be visiting our children, absolutely not. It's our social workers who've got the relationships with the children, with the families, so Empower are not coming in to take over or to do any of the social work. They're coming to help us think differently maybe about how we are approaching some of our placements and how we work with our children around the needs that they have, because needs change. So some of our children have been in our care for many years. They've got older, their family situations have changed. So it's about sort of thinking through, what can we do and how can we do that differently? So they're bringing us capacity in that. They're also doing work with our fostering teams, and our fostering teams have been fully involved in how this has been set up and how we're working it. There's going to be a lot of training going on up until Christmas, and then some in January as well for our staff. But trying to give everyone reassurance that there is no, Empower are not having any individual day-to-day casework responsibility. That absolutely stays with our social workers within all of our proper regulatory structures, so including reviews, including everything else we do with our looked after children is absolutely staying with our social workers and within their services.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffries, you indicated you had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Page 20, CSO2, which is referring to Grangewater. The briefing there reads a little bit like a business plan, and I just wonder if the portfolio holder has got some sort of business case or business plan that she's seen that we aren't seeing to actually improve business here without it resulting in a liability to the council. In particular, where it talks about a new cafe facility, There's always been a lot of talk in this chamber and elsewhere about new facilities, and then there's always a big concern that a couple of years down the line, it becomes a liability for the council. So has she got a business case, or has she seen a business case that she'd be prepared to share with others to see that this would actually be successful?
Thank you, Councillor. The answer is no, I haven't seen a business case for this one. This is one of the proposals that I have had quite an in-depth conversation with Sheila and with the Assistant Director for Education as well. The funding has been released for what we need, but as I say, the business case I haven't seen sight of yet, but it is definitely something that I'm keeping an eye on. In terms of monitoring it, we'll be monitoring this at least, obviously I'll be having conversations all the time about this, but certainly frequent, at least monthly in terms of formal monitoring of it. But what I've also said, and we have agreed, is that Children's Services are aware that if there looks like there's going to be slippage within this proposal, they have to make mitigations with this. This has been a conversation I have already had with Sheila, with the Director of Children's Services, because absolutely take up, in case your point there, of the risk that this does bring with it. So absolutely, and I will be monitoring it, definitely.
Thank you, Councillor, for your answer. She says she's not seen a business case. Could I respectfully suggest that she does actually see if there is a business case? Because, you know, with the greatest respect, officers and councillors in this aren't good at running businesses. That's why we run councils. And I really would be concerned that this could become a liability. Perhaps you could come back to the ONS at a later date with more information on that.
Yep, absolutely, not a problem whatsoever. And we'll certainly work on that together with officers, definitely.
On that note, I'd like to formally request that we make that a recommendation, that the portfolio holder and officer report back, director report back to the relevant ONS committee, because I too have real grave reservations about this. It seems completely aspirational, and you know, we're going to have a cafe, we're going to increase footfall. That's great, but you know, that is a tough ask, and as Councillor Jeffries has said, this council doesn't have a great track record at delivering that kind of thing, and there is competition in the vicinity, much better facilities that you're going to have to compete with, and I'm not sure the council is expert at delivering these kind of facilities. So I have real concerns that well, I think it's an income, it's not a saving, it's an income generator. I have real concerns that the council is going to be able to successfully run this kind of facility. Bearing in mind, as I said, the competition that we have, you know, it closed largely because it wasn't a success. So I think that's something that we really do need to look at in a bit more depth. It seems that income has just been, you know, or frankly plucked from the air. It doesn't seem to be based on any kind of evidence at all. So, as I said, I think so that we as a, you know, as corporate owners can be reassured, I think it would be helpful if you could actually give some more definitive information on how that figure has been arrived at, you know, what testing of the market you've done to arrive at that figure, and to give an assurance that that doesn't actually become a liability. The question I've got is, have you not considered selling the asset and using the proceeds to pay down the debt? Is it not commercially viable to sell Grange Waters? I'm a firm believer somebody in the private sector would run that much more efficiently than the council.
I think there's been a number of attempts in previous years to try to market Grange Waters. There's all sorts of issues around for Grange Waters. It's got protected trees on the site. It's got issues, many issues that have meant it's not as straightforward as it looks. And I know that this council over a number of years has reviewed that and looked at that, and it hasn't been considered to be something that we would take forward. I think this business case has been put forward, and you're right to say, but we really want to explore the commerciality in terms of opportunities at Grange Waters. The extra funding that we've asked for is to bring in some of that expertise that we know we don't have, and capacity. So it is with that we will be able to put forward some ideas about how we can be more commercial with Grange Waters. In the last year, I think without having that in, it did generate 50k worth of money over the money that's been spent on it. So whilst 150k looks a lot, you know, we are as confident as we can be, but it does need further working up. We do acknowledge that.
Thank you. Councillor Abbas.
Thank you, Chair. Just on CSO4, page 22, you have mentioned these young people who have left care and have N or PF restriction. So have you identified any suitable and affordable accommodation, and how confident you are? Because there's a huge difference between 48 to 18,000, a saving of 30,000. So how confident and how have you calculated these figures, and how confident you are you can deliver these savings?
Yep. Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to turn to Sheila for that one, but just to say that yes, the young people have been identified and the properties have, but I am going to defer to Sheila in terms of the technical details just on that.
So you want to know how we came to the figures? Okay. I think what it says here is, in terms of the children's home, we've calculated how much it's going to cost us to run the children's home, and then per placement, so if we end up with one placement in there, based on what we are currently spending as well for children in similar type placements, our own run placement would be a saving of £173,000 per place. If we had 2 children in there, obviously that then increases that. In terms of the young people who have gone into the accommodation that we've now got a contract with, some of those young people were in what's called supported accommodation, which is costing us almost £1,000 a week. Accommodation that they don't actually need all that support because of the age they are and etc. and their needs. So the contract that we've got, the new cost per placement is £18,000. So we have 5 young people going into that placement. That's a saving total of 150k. And we've already identified those 5 young people. We've entered into a contract for one of these placements, and those young people should be moving in the next, as I say, up to 6 weeks. If that works well, so obviously we want to make sure how that works, we want to let that settle in and bed in, then we would be looking at doing more of this, because we have got a number of 18 pluses in supported accommodation who don't need to be in supported accommodation and can be moved on to this sort of placement.
Want to come back, Councillor Abbas? Yeah.
But just for clarification, at point 1, the costs you have mentioned, those are for children with complex needs. So that's a separate kind of model, and this is for those children who are young children, but they are with NRPF conditions.
Yes, so there's 2 models there. The first one, yes, is for a children's home for children with complex needs, and then the second part is a separate proposal within the proposal for 18 plus, and as I say, for 5 young people living who no longer need to be living in supported accommodation, so they'll be going to 18 plus accommodation there.
Just a quick one, Chair. So the young children who will be going to these suitable and affordable accommodation with these massive savings, so are those private properties with private landlords?
Yes, we are contracting with an organisation that have this home that we can place, but we're going into an exclusive contract with them, so it's 5 of our children, young people, will be in the same placement, so it's not young people from other local authorities. So, and that's because we can guarantee them the young people to go in their placement, then they're entering into a contract with us, which is substantially cheaper than if they were on the open market.
Thank you. Final question from Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Following on with the savings around CSO2 Grange Waters, a great community asset which is underutilised, It's also great to see the increasing of utilisation and capacity in the recommendation. But most don't actually know Grange Waters was there due to its locality. With the recommendation talking about marketing, can you talk further how that would look?
Yeah, so some of that is about the additional resource we're looking to help us to set up a better website, to do more publicity and to get out there in the community more, because you're absolutely right, it's an amazing resource. And when people do come to it, they're absolutely astonished that there's such a great resource in the authority, and we want to make more use of that for sure. And that's part of being more commercial, about having a better website, getting out there and being a bit more like some of those, I don't want to name them in a public forum, but other setups that deliver similar things. We want to be able to certainly make the Thurrock residents actually want to come and use Grange Waters more than they currently do. I have to say, we have already tried some of this with our schools, particularly with our SEN pupils, and we've got a lot of schools signed up to doing outdoor education at Grange Waters, and that's been really successful as well. And obviously they pay for that.
Thank you. Okay, so we're now going to be looking at these proposed savings in corporate services, and these are on pages 24 to 33 of the slides. Councillor Worrell, did you want to say something in introduction?
It's not Councillor Worrell. I'm the portfolio holder for most of them.
You then.
And a couple are under Councillor Holloway. I'm happy to speak to them, or we can both speak to them if you want. Obviously, they're all there, so we are going to take them as read. But I just wanted to make a general comment following on from the recommendation to take that particular saving to scrutiny, to look into it in more depth. I'd absolutely support that. I think you're right to make that recommendation. But I just want to provide a little bit of reassurance to members, really, about how we've really tightened up the budget savings tracking, because it's certainly a valid concern, because some savings that were put forward last year, of course, have proved undeliverable. But what's been put in place, and there's been a lot of work that's gone into this, is a deep dive into all of the savings. So we found out exactly where we were with them, and we have RAG-rated reports. Those savings are all within this year being tracked on a monthly basis. We know exactly what savings are on track. We know exactly what savings have been banked and delivered now. And we know those ones that are proving undeliverable or are delayed, so that we can either put mitigation into place as soon as possible, or develop an action plan for how we're going to move them out of red or out of amber and into the green and blue. So that's the work that's been done this year. And the plan for next year's savings will be that in January there'll be a check-in to make sure that everything is ready to go on each of these savings on the 1st of April. Again, we will be monthly tracking with on a RAG-rated basis, so we know exactly which ones are on track. If any are proving undeliverable, we will know that as soon as possible, so that we can either put other mitigation in place or other plans in place. And then there'll be an extra deep dive mid-term, just to absolutely make sure in detail that the savings that have been proposed are on track. And if not, we know that we have to mitigate it somewhere else. So just to offer a bit of reassurance in that way. But I absolutely welcome extra scrutiny of savings by ONS throughout the year. We want to make these as robust as possible. So thank you for that recommendation.
Thank you very much. Just a few questions from me. COR1, appreciate it's a relatively small saving, but just a very quick answer. I know that there's been 2 previous attempts to outsource that service previously, and they've been unsuccessful. What do you think we'll need to do differently to make that a reality this time?
Well, one of the reasons that the last outsourcing failed is because it went out prior to intervention. But there were no bites of the cherry, and I think, you know, it's kind of got a bit lost in the chaos of intervention. There is a national shortage of occupational health nurses, so our in-house service is covered by agency staff at the moment. We have got a number of contracts that are fulfilled by other people. The best viable option here is to outsource. And we have done some pre-market engagement that has taken place with suppliers to actually inform the service specification that we're going out with. So we're going out with a much more honed approach this time. And there is a robust market out there to deliver. So obviously we can't, nothing can be guaranteed, but as much as possible, the pre-work that we've done, we believe will make this outsourcing exercise successful, whereas in the past it wasn't. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. And COR3, just so I'm clear, that saving, am I right in thinking that is purely as a result of role deletions? Is that where the entirety of the saving is coming from?
COR3 is Councillor Holloway, so I'll hand over to Councillor Holloway.
Thank you. As it sits under public protection, I'll answer it if that's okay, Chair.
I think just on that point, I think going back to, just sorry to interrupt, I mean, I do know none of these saving proposals, unlike other years, have the relevant portfolio holder's name against it. It's only the director's name. So in terms of future years, quite bizarre to have a list of savings and not have them subscribe to the relevant portfolio holder. So there might be some jumping around as we go forward, but it would help in future years if they actually came in the portfolio holders' names. But over to you, Councillor Holloway.
I completely agree with that, Councillor. And your question with regards to the roles?
Yeah, it's a £500,000 saving. I just want to be clear, is that coming entirely from the deletion of 10 to 15 full-time posts?
It does come from a restructure, yes. But as it says in the note, there is a current consultation, so the exact number of posts is up for consultation, but yes.
Okay, so how can we be, if it's up for consultation and we're not sure, how can we arrive at that quite precise figure of £500,000? That's obviously, that could vary, couldn't it, by a fair amount?
That's absolutely right. It could vary depending on the consultation, but we don't think it will vary a significant amount away from that. It would be a post or two, not all of the roles. And it was important for us to present the saving in this way because it is going to be a substantive redesign of the service, so it's important to get scrutiny.
Thank you. And obviously those services are about, you know, amongst some of the most important that the council provides. What assurance can you give that once the restructure has taken place and there is lesser number of post holders, what assurance can you give that there won't be any impact on the quality of service?
Absolutely. At the moment, we've got enforcement that sit under housing, we've got enforcement that sit under environmental protection. So at the moment, we have a fragmented service with different managers and different kinds of enforcement. We think that bringing them under one structure and one level of management will actually provide a better service, but because they'll be across a number of enforcement areas. And whilst they're out in the communities, they'll be keeping their eye on not just one area, but multiple areas, therefore working more efficiently.
Thank you. Are there any questions from other members? Councillor Spate.
Thank you, Chair. I find it quite interesting that we're here tonight and we're looking at a lot of things relating to next year's budget. And most of them, unfortunately, do involve making savings and making cuts. Corporate, actually, is somewhat different in that it does have the opportunity for us to look at revenue generation. There are many ways in which this council can make money that it's not currently pursuing. And I'd just like to know why there are, I mean, sorry, I'll rephrase the question. I'd like to know if we've looked at revenue generation opportunities when we're preparing the budget, and if we haven't, why not? Don't know who answers that.
Well, I believe that we have put forward proposals that are about income generation. Victoria, do you want to cover the one COR 04?
Yes, absolutely. Councillor, drawing your attention to CRO4, we do believe that we can gather an income from our shared service agreement relating to our work with local other authorities on our licensing work, environmental protection, food safety and health and safety teams who can provide our services to other local authorities. So we definitely believe that we are looking into those opportunities.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about selling our services in terms of the staff and the opportunities that we've got. We've been down that road with a number of departments within the council. What I'm talking about is the opportunity to use the marketing tools that we've got in place across the borough. And I've raised this previously. For example, we spent a very small fortune creating opportunities for advertising for companies around Grace High Street, around other structured places within the streets of the borough. We've got many opportunities to get sponsorship for some of the facilities that we offer. And I just don't seem to see, and if I'm not getting it, then I apologise if it is happening. But we did have a department that was tasked with generating revenue from the assets that we had, from the opportunities that we had, whether it be roundabouts, whether it be events at the Thameside Theatre, whether it be having sponsors on emails and letters that we send out to the public, having sponsorship on our weekly subscription newsletter, and all the other things that we do that we don't take a commercial opportunity to exploit. That's what I'm talking by exploiting potential revenue opportunities.
I take your point, Councillor Spate, but I mean, a lot of the things that you've spoken about are actual peanuts, and we've had an 18.2 million budget saving that we need to meet. So, you know, we have concentrated in the areas where we can make that total budget saving. I'm not saying that we're ruling it out, and certainly as we go forward, I'm sure these opportunities will be looked at. I don't know if Claire, you want to come in on that in terms of anything that we've looked at? I don't know.
Working this one? So I know we already do actively engage sponsorship on our roundabouts. That's something that our comms team manage. So we have started that piece of work. We were looking at previously advertisement on the side of our waste vehicles as well. So that was something we were looking to explore. We haven't really taken it that much further, as Councillor Muldowney said. We've been trying to concentrate on the big ticket items, but we have got some other income generating savings proposals in the place proposals this evening.
Well, coming from Yorkshire's an adage, you look after the pennies and the pounds will take care of themselves. And I seem to recall when the proposals were put forward to planning to create and spend money for advertising banners in Gracetown Centre and other places, I think the projected revenue per year was around about 150,000. I'm glad to hear that this council thinks that £150,000 a year is peanuts.
I think moving on, Councillor Byrne.
Yes, well, looking at this COR 08, should we or do we use the 49's level of expertise? I mean, my level of expertise is outsourcing print fulfilment. If that's 100,000, I would say I could put 20% on that with my knowledge and expertise, so without even looking at it. So should we, there's 49, I'm sure we've got bankers and people that know more than, I'm sure I know more about fulfilment than anybody in this building, and my expertise maybe save money, maybe not, but should we look at the skills we've all got and then maybe before we present budget, say, look at these figures, what do you think? Just an idea, just rambling, really.
Certainly food for thought, and as I said, I think a lot of what we've heard tonight is something to reflect on, I think, after the meeting, but I don't know. Have you got a particular question you wanted, or was it just an observation?
My expertise could probably make that. So if I see the someone like me could see those figures before, he'd say that is perfect, or you're missing a trick, and say in all this, if we use all our expertise, maybe we could save money for doing nothing.
Yeah, I think that's
So it's not a
noted.
question, it's just an
Thank you.
observation.
Thanks, Councillor Byrne.
Well, Councillor Byrne, I mean, we're here tonight if you want to give us your expertise on how you think we could increase that figure. I'm sure everybody would be open to hearing your suggestions.
I offered it 5 years ago and it was declined, and at the time I could have saved a considerable amount of money to our spend.
Okay, Councillor D. Arnold, please.
Thank you, Chair. This phase 2 is like phase 2 because when we first looked at this in the previous budget, the report that came forward for this part of the review wasn't really full and thorough, and so phase 2 got put into this year. Can I have some reassurances that the review this time is based on more information, better report, and also at that time the leader at the time, myself and the CEO were provided with a very full and what I thought was thorough that needed validating report from those working in the print room on the shop floor with better efficiencies and savings than was in the original report. So I want to make sure that that report has made it to the current portfolio holder, and that that will also form part of the review, and that you will bring those people that know that service best to the table to talk to you.
Just for clarity, you asking, has there been engagement with the staff in print? Is that what you're asking?
That's part of it, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to have to hand over to officers to answer that question. Part of the question. What was the other part of the question? Because I probably can answer that.
That the original report from officers on the phase 2 part of this wasn't very full and comprehensive and thorough, and so that was why it was withdrawn at the time and put into this budget rather than the last budget, and it became a phase 1 and a phase 2. So I want to make sure that the review this time is more thorough, and that the very thorough report that the print room staff did themselves forms part of that review as well, and that they are involved in the conversations around that and not just a consultation from HR about their employment, but that they are at the table to bring their ideas forward.
If I can just answer that, Councillor Arnold, yes, they have been part of this process. They have been part of this process, and their original paper has formed part of these discussions.
Councillor Fletcher, did you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. Now, this might possibly count as the stupidest question of the night, because you're going to tell me probably it's here. A lot of the proposals in this pack are dependent on some degree of digital development, digital transformation. Now, I know we were at some point looking at digital as a thing, as a large project. Is that in here anywhere, or if not, why not?
Yes, it is in there.
Told you.
It is in there. We will come on to it. It's under the PAN organisational savings, because, you know, it goes, because as you say, the digital transformation goes across the whole council. So I'm happy to speak on. Shall I speak on that when it comes up?
It's all right. I'll save the non-stupid part of my question for then.
There's no stupid questions, Councillor Fletcher. Thank you for your question.
Indeed not. No stupid questions at all. Better asked than worried about it. No, definitely not. If there's one person who doesn't ask the stupid questions, Councillor Fletcher, it's you. Councillor Abbas.
Thank you, Chair. I'm slightly concerned on these figures because the councillor portfolio did mention, you know, we are talking about big figures, 18.2 million. So looking at the answers and these reports, it look like they're just trying to come up with figures, you know, just throwing certain figures. But if you look at the risks sections of most of these reports, so it looks like whatever they are proposing is not working. And the figures which they have mentioned, they are just kind of trying to come up to this 18.2 million without any kind of viable business plan or costs. But if you look at these, for example, they have no costs so far in terms of what software costs or which software platforms they are going to use, and they have no clue what those specialist services are, and then they don't know which other local authorities, because no one wished to engage with Thurrock. So how confident we are, like the figures you have quoted here, they are real figures. You are not just kind of trying to come up to these 18.2 million. For some figures, for you, maybe these are peanuts, but when we count these figures, even 1 penny counts, and that's how you come up to 18.2 million. So can you please explain and clarify what risk mitigation have you taken into account, and how practically you have come to these figures? So the question is for both portfolio holders and officers.
Can I just clarify that you're talking about these ones in particular, because it sounded like you were asking an overarching question.
This is specifically about CR3, CR4, CR5, COR.
Okay, well, I want to say something general about risk management, because obviously part of the reason that we're in this situation and we're here tonight having to make these cost savings is there was no risk management around the investment. So we have added a risk management, a risk section, so which, you know, anything that we try and do is going to carry risks. You can't avoid risk in life, okay? And you can't avoid, there obviously is an element of risk. The figures that we've got are estimates, but they're estimates that are based on data, and I can tell you that Dawn's been an absolute terrier and hasn't let any savings through unless she's been shown the figures and shown that there really is a proper cost saving there to be made, or a real chance to make income generation. So I just say that as a general point. So in terms of that, I think you talked about digital. I don't think there are any digital savings under here. As I said, the digital transformation comes under the pan-organisational savings, which we'll come to later on. But I can say there are some IT-related ones here that I can speak to if you wish.
Like those one, COR 03. If you look at these risks, then if you look at risks at COR4, you know, I do agree, you know, obviously we need to have these risk policies and risk assessments, you know, but we need at the same time also have a mitigation factor, like how we will address these risks. So obviously you have come up with these proposals, but looking at these risks, you know, there is no mitigation. So you have just thrown some proposals without any clue what those proposals are and how those figures are. And then you have mentioned those risks, and risk clearly says those things cannot be achieved. So what is the point of having those proposals when we already know in a next section there is no solution, or there are no services available, or there is no platform?
I think that you're misunderstanding the point of having a risk section. What we're doing is we're actually acknowledging that with any cost saving there are risks, and the reason that it's important to take notice of risks, I thought, has been very clearly illustrated by the fact that we're now in intervention having to make these cuts. But anyway, I'll let Victoria speak to the ones that you've mentioned that are under her. However, I think you said COR 5. So if we look at this, there's a cost saving from contract renewal, which reduced the monthly spend over a 2-year period. So that's where the cost saving comes there. That is part of that contract. So I think that's a very firm basis for feeling that that cost saving is going to be delivered. The risk that there might be, there's a very, very slight risk, but still we've put it in there, that if staff use their mobile phones as hotspots, that might actually incur rack-up data charges. So perhaps I'll explain what I mean by that. So there is a possibility that if somebody's got no Wi-Fi at home and they've got a council phone, they could, in theory, I mean, I wouldn't have a clue how to do this, I don't know about anybody else, use their mobile phone as a hotspot to run their devices at home off. I mean, I think most people have got Wi-Fi, so it's a very, very tiny risk. However, because it is possible that that could be done, we put it in the risk section so that we make sure that that's managed on a monthly basis. So we will be quickly alerted if somebody was doing that they, to the fact that they were doing it, because they would have a very, very high data usage, which would be out of sync with normal data usage. So, and then they will be contacted by IT. So the risk section is there to acknowledge that there is always a risk with any kind of change that you make, and to make sure that we're cognizant of that, that we're aware of that, and that we've got a plan to manage any risks that are inherited in bringing that saving forward. So I hope that example gives you an idea of why the risk section is there. The risk section does not mean that we can't deliver that saving. The risk section is there to help us make sure that we can deliver that saving by being aware of any potential risks that might affect us delivering the saving. So I hope that explains the general premise, but please ask more questions if you need to.
Does that answer your question, or does it? Okay, I mean, as with any of these, if members think there are specific ones that we need to look at in more detail at our respective committees, then we can. I think my understanding of your question was that you were saying in respect of those specific savings you've highlighted, in those specific cases, the risks to you are sufficiently high compared to the others that they undermine, in your view, the potential validity of achieving that saving. Is that what you're saying? Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Manoir.
Thank you, Chair. This is actually more so to do with the way in which the report has been written. Like, for instance, with COR01, when it references OH service, if you're not familiar with the subject-specific terminology or the abbreviation, you're not really going to understand what that means. And I think that if we're going to be sat here and scrutinising information, there's a lot of information to take in. I think at least as a matter of like best practice, if we're going to use like abbreviations, we should say the full thing first and then use the abbreviation. It seems quite small, but in the grand scheme of things, I think it's really important that when we're scrutinising, at least for people who aren't experts in the area or officers or directors or a portfolio holder, we should have like an understanding of what we're scrutinising. So it's something small, but I thought I'd bring it up because as well, if people are listening at home and we keep using these abbreviations and no one's really clarified what that means, then how are they supposed to access the information? It's just a little gripe that I have, but yeah, I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Councillor Manoir, for that. I do take on board that, yes, you know, we'll definitely take that on board for next time if we happen to be the people here delivering the savings. But for your information at the moment, it's OH stands for occupational health, but I do take your point.
Yeah,
and,
I figured that out through listening
yeah.
to what you said, but I mean, I think it'd be better if it was in like the title, just so that when it says outsourcing OH service, it could literally just say outsourcing occupational health nurse service, and then you could use the abbreviation throughout and it'd be fine. It's something small, but I just think it's important so that people know what they're talking about. Thank you.
Absolutely, I take your point, and we'd certainly make sure that we do that next time. Okay, thank you.
It is an important point and one well raised. I think it goes back to the point that Councillor Spate raised, that they were relatively rushed through. They didn't come to their respective committees. They did come to us quite late, and a lot of these kind of things perhaps could have been ironed out outside of this committee. We might not have needed to raise these kind of points if the process had been a bit better. So it's not a trivial point. It's well raised. Councillor Fox.
Yes, on COR 05. Says the mobile phone contract was renegotiated in 2024. Prior to the new deal being put in place, were checks done against the other 3 mobile phone operators to see if that saving could have been even more?
I'm sorry, I've got blocked here at the minute. I couldn't actually hear your question. Would you mind repeating it? I do apologise.
Right, the mobile phone contract was renegotiated in 2024. Before that new 2-year deal was put in place, were checks done against the other 3 mobile companies in this country to see if that saving could have been even more than what you've got?
I haven't got that information because obviously I think Marta can probably answer that one though.
Good evening. That contract has been negotiated before my time, before I started, but market engagement has been undertaken and a number of suppliers have been engaged in negotiations. So that is the maximum that could have been achieved at the time.
Did you want to come back on that, Councillor Fox?
No, thank you.
Okay, so last question then from Councillor Fletcher.
Thanks, Chair. Not so much a question, actually, and this may well already have been done, but I'd like to put forward a recommendation on the back of what Councillor Spate was saying earlier, that perhaps we do one final sweep in terms of, are there any other potential revenue generating assets or capacities across the directorates that we could be making more use of? And it's probably a general thing, you know, not just at budget time. It's one of those things I think that we can perhaps keep a closer eye on.
I think, you know, I mean, I think we're all in favour of scrutiny, so that could be potentially. I'm not sure whether this would come under Claire or Alex. Alex, did you want to speak to it as the change management crew, or are we keeping to place?
I think I think your Councillor Fletcher's talking generally, and you've raised a specific recommendation, I think, which we've captured, and we'll go for the recommendations at the end. But again, valid recommendation, and we'll consider at the end how we take those forward. Councillor Kent?
Yeah, putting together a balanced budget is always a balance of those savings that you need to absolutely be able to cash and an element of revenue raising. I'd be more than happy to take a recommendation to Cabinet that asks us to have a look to see if there are more opportunities for revenue raising. But to be honest, when you're trying to take £60 million out of an organisation, what you have to concentrate on is where you can actually turn the tap off and where you can guarantee delivering those savings. What we've seen already tonight are some of those areas where we've tried to be aspirational, for instance, Grange Waters. There's a quite legitimate concern that says, how do you know you're going to deliver that? So as I say, it's a balance, but more than happy to take that recommendation and to have a look at that piece of work.
Thank you. So before we move on, I missed Councillor Jeffries. Apologies, Councillor Jeffries, before we move
thank you,
on
Chair.
to the finance savings.
Not so much a question, it was just in light of what Councillor Arnold said about the report that the print room put forward. I'm not sure, I think Councillor Muldooney's possibly not seen this report. For our savings to work, we need to take every member of staff in this building along with us. That team spent hours and hours of their own time producing a really, really good report that had far greater savings than what we were going to come up with, and we gave them a commitment we'd work with it. So can I suggest to Claire, if the copy of that report can be made available to the leader and to the relevant portfolio holder if they've not already seen it, because I think it should be there and used as a model of the way employees can help to generate savings.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. So we'll move on now to the finance saving proposals, which are on pages 34 to 36. And Councillor Muldooney, I think this is you. Councillor Panjala, did you have a question or are you raising a point?
Yes, Chair, I have a question.
Which is on the previous slides, is it?
Yeah, that's COR 05.
Okay. I did say final question, but I'll be lenient and certainly pose your question.
As per the report showing that 99,000 we are saving on the telephone contracts, just I would like to know that one, how many total phone contracts do we have? And how much each contract we are spending? Previously, how much we used to spend, and currently how much we reduced? Just I want to know that one, if you have information. Thank you. Thank you.
Can you speak to the...
I wouldn't like to be the one answering that, but who's going to volunteer?
There are over 2,000 devices right now, which we are calling back. So what we're doing is analysis on the usage, and where there's no usage, we're calling them back. Sorry? Oh, sorry. Apologies. We've got over 2,000 devices right now, and what we're doing is analysis on the usage. So where there's no usage, we're calling them back. Where there's low usage, we're investigating whether their phone is really needed. There's new policy that we're putting in place to put in place justification for why the mobile device is needed, and there will be a policy that eSIM card is offered in the first place, if needed at all. And where we get back the devices, we'll recycle them instead of buying new handset devices, and that is additional saving on top of the contractual savings that we're proposing.
Does that help with your question? Satisfactory answer? Do you use your microphone, please, Councillor?
Yeah, sorry. Thank you for the answer. For 2,000 handsets are using contract. So how much budget to be allocated in the previous year? Used one. Just I want to know the whatever budget we have used in the previous year.
How many devices we've used previous
the
year?
total budget, like how much amount we spent.
The budget. I'm afraid I will have to come back to you on that. I don't know on top of my head what was the budget for that contract last year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Just to confirm, you'll come back with information on it for Councillor Panjala outside of the meeting. Thank you. So we will now move on to the finance saving proposals on pages 34 to 36.
Yep. Yes, so first of all, what I would like to say is that the first proposal we have actually, for the local council tax banded scheme, for a number of reasons, we have decided not to move forward with that. As the plan on the page said, it has been subject to consultation and further modelling. And a report will be coming to Cabinet on that in January. There are a number of factors. I mean, the migration to universal credit is ongoing and it's been delayed. So there are lots of moving parts to this. So we just felt that at the moment it's not the right time to bring this one forward. However, as it was subject to consultation, we've had lots of conversations about backup plans. So the saving will still remain and will be mitigated instead by service restructure. No redundancies will be involved in that. And further efficiencies on billing, etc. But we may come back to this in further years when things have settled down. Also, we think that government may change the universal credit system, and hopefully that might resolve some of the problems that we've got with the increased administration charges. So just to be absolutely clear, we won't be bringing this saving forward this year, but the saving still remains and it will be mitigated by those other two factors. And I think maybe I should give some background for the third saving, which is not really a saving. It's retained business rates. So when we estimate the business rates at draft budget, we don't actually know the actual amount at that point, so we have to estimate. The actual amount of business rates are confirmed when the year-end business rate returns are done. So what we see here is we've got some additional business rates that we actually got in 22-23 after budget setting had happened for 23-24. So it was put into the budget for 24-25, but not applied to the budget. So it's a reserve, it's an earmarked reserve, just in case we were able to apply it to the savings target in this instance. So I'll open to questions.
Thank you. So just so we're absolutely sure, FIN01, you're saying that is not now a proposal for this year?
Yeah, we're not actually going to go ahead with the local council banded tax scheme. It was out to consultation. So it was always dependent on what came back from that consultation and also further modelling that we wanted to do to make absolutely sure that it was something that we wanted to go ahead with. So because of these number of moving factors at the moment, we've decided that we'll err on the side of caution, because obviously we're talking about council tax discount rates, and so these are some vulnerable people, you know, these are some of the, if you're having to claim that benefit, you are probably one of the lower income residents in the borough. So we've decided that to avoid any potential adverse impact on residents, we won't be bringing that forward. But we will, the saving still remains, because we're going to mitigate it through other means, and they will be service restructure and further efficiencies on billing. That still needs to be worked up, so I do apologise that you haven't got a plan on a page at this point, but we've only just got the results, the report and the results from the consultation, so we had to make that a last minute decision. So I do apologise, but I still do think that it's the right thing to do, especially with people still suffering from the cost of living rises, that we make absolutely sure that we're not having an adverse impact on our residents. Okay.
Okay, so obviously in the description of the proposal, it was said that this proposal would maintain current levels of support. Are you now saying that that wouldn't be the case, or you've got information to suggest that that wouldn't be the case?
It would, I mean, it would maintain current levels of support in terms of people would still get 25% discount, 50% discount, etc. But moving to a banded system, this is why we did further modelling, would create some winners or and losers, because you know, somebody, because at the moment we have to, the problem is with universal credit is that if you do an hour's extra overtime, you lose universal credit. So there's lots of changes that there wasn't with the old legacy benefits. So I don't know if any of you have ever been on universal credit or know people who are on universal credit, but I've got a couple of very close friends who are both single mothers, and it's an absolute nightmare. So, for example, one of my friends moved into temporary accommodation, and when she did the calculator that said that she would get lots more universal credit in terms of a certain element of it, she was expecting that money, but then when the money came through the next month, she got half the amount that she normally gets. So these adjustments are causing a problem for us because we means test it. So every time there's an adjustment of the universal credit at the moment, we have to means test again that person's claim. So it's very, very confusing for residents who are on this benefit, and we are hoping that the current government will actually do something about fixing that. And also it's incurring more and more administration costs, because obviously every time there's a change, even if somebody does an hour's overtime, then their claim might change. So the reason we were looking at a banded scheme is that it would provide more stability for residents, because they would know week to week, month to month, how much council tax discount they were getting, because it would be within a band, and we wouldn't have to keep, and for the council, we wouldn't have to keep reassessing their claim every time there was a slight change in their universal credit payment. So I hope that explains it. But because there's been delays in the rollout of the universal, obviously that's still going on, people are being moved onto it. We think that there are changes that will be coming from government, and also our modelling showed us that there would be some people who were losers. There would be some winners going over to a banded scheme, but there would be a small amount of people who would be getting less money if we move to a banded scheme. We've decided to actually shelve this for this year and mitigate it with the other efficiencies that I've mentioned before. So I hope that explains to people why we did that. And the reason that we've made that decision is because, you know, one of our priorities when we were steering officers about what budget savings to bring forward was that we shouldn't be impacting our poorest residents, basically, and those on benefits. Thank you.
Can I just ask when the decision was taken to remove this proposal?
We've literally just had the results of the consultation, so it happened this week. So I do apologise for that, but obviously in the plan on the page it does say that it was subject to consultation and further modelling. So
Okay, so in a very short period of time like that, we've managed to say, but don't worry, we can find that £125,000 from other areas. That, if we decided to take this proposal forward, presumably you could have found that additional 125,000 on top of that. Can you see why I'm a bit concerned that you can suddenly take something out and in a very short period of time say, but we're going to find it anyway from here? Why wasn't that from here put forward as a saving additionally?
Well, I mean, it does say in the notable risks that the refreshed modelling is required to be undertaken in November 24, which is where we are now. So that modelling has taken place. We've had previous discussions that it may not be something that we can bring forward. And we've clearly noted that in the risks. Principles of the new scheme are currently out to public consultation. The consultation happens within a certain time period. That report is coming, as I say, to January Cabinet, so everybody will be able to see that once it's in the public domain. And obviously, because we were looking at further modelling, there have been conversations within the team about how we might mitigate it if we couldn't bring that forward.
Okay. I mean, they're all proposals. We might not be taking any of them forward in the end. Without labouring this too much, I'm just a bit taken aback that at quite short notice, a saving like this can be taken out. And it just almost feels like you've very quickly fudged another saving to offset that. And I don't require a response, but I think what we do need at the next corporate ONS meeting is a bit more clarity around how you're going to offset that saving and why that couldn't have come forward as a standalone saving anyway when this was still being looked at. But thank you, that's fine.
Okay, I think that's a fair challenge, and I'm sure that can be accommodated.
Thank you.
But it really is just because we had to we have to consult, probably, as you know anyway, on the council tax scheme. So we consulted on the banded scheme this year, but we've decided not to move ahead with it. If I had have had the information earlier, I would have given it to you earlier.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on the finance savings? No. Okay. In that case, we will move on to the place savings, which can be found on pages 37 to 59. I've got a feeling there might be some jumping around between portfolio holders on this, but does the portfolio holder for place want to take the lead on these? Obviously, if there are things outside of your remit, please obviously redirect us.
There is a mixed chair between myself and other portfolio holders who will jump in appropriately, but yes, I think a good chunk of them are mine, and I'm very happy to go directly to questions from members.
Okay, Councillor Byrne, did you want to, as a chair, do you want to raise any questions?
We discussed earlier with the committee were asked their own questions, but for me on this PLA free street lighting, we're dimming the lights. Does that give us concerns of crime or attack or sexual violence or whatever? I mean, that worries me a lot, to save a few pounds and dimming our lights. Have we looked into the risk of dimming lights?
Am I okay to come back straight? Thank you, Chair. Yes, that was one of the first questions that I asked officers when receiving this proposal. I think it's the majority of people will think about that when they see it. We actually already dim the lights, so this was something that actually was introduced last year. And I don't know about others, but it's definitely something that I didn't notice in the borough. So they were slightly dimmed last year, and what we're doing now is just increasing a further 10%. There isn't any evidence whatsoever that there is an increase in crime where there is a dimming of lights. We're not switching the lights off, we are just dimming them 10% further to what was dimmed last year. But I have asked officers, and I do ask residents and councillors to keep a close eye on this, and if they do see anything, hear anything, report anything, whether that's antisocial behaviour or more serious, we are going to very, very closely monitor the impact of that. And if there is any issues, then we will be addressing those definitely and straight away.
Any other questions, Councillor Byrne? No? Okay. Councillor Sisterson, did I see your hand up? Did you have a question? Yeah.
Yes, to Councillor Holloway. I want to ask about the Linford Recycling Centre, because obviously the wards at the west of the borough are really not very well served. It's a long way to travel with waste. And I think there's some really good ideas coming forward, but in particular I'm looking at things like the reuse shop. Is there any possibility that that could maybe be sited on the west side of the borough so that other people could access it, as a thought?
Absolutely. Again, and as a resident of the west of the borough, this is something that, I would also like to see. And when I raised this with officers, that they said locating it at a more central or a western site would present real logistical challenges. The reason for that is because of the shop's stock coming directly from items brought to the household waste recycling centre by residents. To establish it somewhere else, they would then have to transport the goods somewhere else, and then that would incur additional costs for transport, premises, etc., and that would outweigh the financial benefits of the shop. And again, I think there was a reasonable assumption that residents visiting the recycling centre would use the refuse shop there. As they were disposing of their goods, they might have a look at goods that are available and drop things off and take things home. In the longer term, I think it is a really valid point for those living across the borough, and I do know that the team are exploring the possibility, but again, it's just an exploration of a possibility of selling some items online through platforms like Facebook Marketplace, eBay, or even a dedicated sales page. So I do hope that residents across the borough would, especially in the west of the borough, would make that get better for them to kind of access what's at that site.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Just a little observation first. We knew we were going to be here a long time tonight. There's no waters here at all for people. I think that's a bit sad, really. This is going to be a long meeting and we can't even have a drink, but there you go. we're going to spend £1.4 million on refuse vehicles, waste vehicles. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I've had experience before with the former Section 151 officer, or shall I say the former, that's why we're here talking about cuts, in respect of when we purchased vehicles before. And I suggested at the time, maybe look at leasing, because all waste collection systems change. And he totally, should we say, blanked the idea of leasing, only to spend a lot of money as to purchase vehicles, and then within a short space of time, probably 18 months, to realise that these vehicles weren't good for purpose. So there we, yes, exactly. And so it proved my point, but it was a great cost to council for that. So I'm saying that it could be a savings to look at leasing, because you've got all these new systems that you want to put in place. You know, don't do the same again. Go and buy loads of vehicles, and hopefully that's going to work for it not to work. So just observation there, and then I'd like to come back again, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. As you said, it was under the former administration, and I assure you I won't copy that decision or many others the administration previously did either.
Thank you for that. Yeah, as I say, it could be a way to look at things, and that's going to save £1.4 million. We can just pay a little bit as we go along. The number of waste collection rounds, you're looking to reduce them, so I'm going to combine that with two parts, really. How many rounds are you going to take out, and are you going to still use the sweeping route as such? Because we did change over so now we go from east to west in the sweeping operation, which when I was chair of Cleaner and Greener, that came in, and it took a little while to implement, but once it got going, it worked quite well. So where are we on that one?
Yep, from the collections route optimisation item, the number of collection rounds are going to go from 17 to 14. And as a result of that, there will be there is possible changes likely to the routes and the rounds. That the team will look through an algorithm through the experience of the managers and the teams about the best routes to be collecting from under that 17 to 14 rounds. So there might lead to some changes there. Yes, Councillor.
And just another one, no redundancies are going to be put in place as to reduce services as such, or routes or things like that. Can you guarantee that?
So no permanent staff redundancies are planned. There is going to be a reduction in staffing, 3 drivers and 6 loaders, but they're going to be managed through existing agency staff.
Thank you very much. This is the first point of contact for residents. That's what they say. They pay their rates, and the only thing they see about it is their bins being collected. Now, the thing being, we put in this thing with the brown bins this year in regards to the £80, and a lot of bins got, should we say, forgot about, and that was quite a heavy load of councillors to get these bins. So we must get this right, because they're increasing council tax, so it needs to be got right. Thank you.
If I could just come in on that, I completely agree with you. I mean, it's not just important to residents, it's important to us because we live in the borough as well, and it just annoys us just as much as it annoys others. I really do hope that we get this service right. I think on our garden waste scheme, and I'm sure that there'll be other questions on that later in the evening, we did experience a 99.91 first-time collection success rate when that scheme was rolled out. So I do understand there were hiccups, but on a scheme of that size, it was something that we're actually incredibly proud of.
Chair, one more point, and I'll finished. Recycling. It says in here how low we are. We've been like that for years and years. So I really hope we can get this right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor C. Holloway.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Hang on. Bear with. bloody technology. Bear with me, Chairman. Yeah, well, yeah, well, while I've got the floor, Chair, and going straight on to PLA 04, concerning highways and transportation, just a quick look at the numbers regarding the personnel. We're losing 18 posts. The costings have already been touched on, the 547,000. There are 11 vacancies and a winding up of fixed-term contracts that leaves a surplus of 4 to be dealt with. Now, while I've got the floor, Chair, I think, as the leader said earlier, we do have a responsibility first and foremost to our residents, but we also have a duty of care to our frontline employees, as Councillor Jones just alluded to. The question that I'm asking is, of these 4 remaining members, I'm not going to get into the realms of how we're going to manage them, but is the consultation process in place in anticipation of these budget proposals for not only these 4 personnel, but all of the personnel who are affected under these proposals as employees of ours at this particular moment in time? Because when these are implemented, you can't just say to people, this is what you're going to be doing, displacements, redundancies, one thing and another. This consultation process needs to be rolled on earlier, from day one, from as soon as these are rubber stamped. So, while I've got the floor, to finish, Chair, I would also like to place on record our appreciation to our employees, including the members who are in here tonight, staying up a lot later when they should be home with their families. I'd like to put that on record, Chair. And really, I'd like to ask, are we now on the move, that if we're going to put these into place, we can bring our employees alongside us with these changes?
Okay, just before someone comes back on that, just a point of note. I understand the Constitution requires ONS meetings to finish at 10 o'clock. I'm proposing that we carry on anyway, but that's just a point of note to make sure that we are following all the rules. So we'll carry on until we conclude business. But did somebody want to respond to Councillor Holloway?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Dad. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, look, it is a very serious point. It is a very serious point that you make, and anyone that has gone through a restructure, a reorganisation, a redundancy scheme will know how upsetting, distressing, you know, that kind of period of uncertainty. We know how that feels, and we do our best to mitigate any outcomes from that and support staff absolutely through this process. We do value all of our staff, and it is something that we wish that we didn't have to do, but I can assure everybody, and I hope you know, managers, staff and all of us will be reassured that we are going to be looking after those that are going to be managed both out of the organisation and those that are remaining. We consider it a high priority.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just relating to PLA 08, the doorstep recycling scheme. A good news story, providing that free of charge across the borough, recycling items which can help minimise fly tipping across the borough. I just would like clarification on what type of electrical items they'll be collecting. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. It is a good news story. I think anywhere where we're encouraging recycling, which ultimately is far less money on the residents for us to dispose of, is always a good thing. So these schemes are definitely to be welcomed. The small electrical items include mobile phones, power tools and kitchen appliances. But if there are any specific queries or questions from residents, do direct them to the website or a member of the team who can answer that.
Yeah, thank you. It is a good news story, but just to remind members that where we can, if we can try and confine our questions to the savings specifically and how that affects the budget. We obviously all want to know more about these services, but perhaps outside of this meeting, it's not really tonight to sort of question how the services are going to work. But there's lots of good news stories actually in here, so some not so good, what we might come on to, but some good news stories. But thank you for highlighting that, Councillor Green. Next question from Councillor Diano.
Thank you, Chair. I don't really know which section this sits in, but Councillor Watson last night made some very good points around 106 monies. And I don't see them mentioned in any proposals anywhere. And it might be that they're just hidden underneath those top lines. But it's about, if we're making efficiencies, it's about being able to use that 106 money efficiently to back up those frontline voluntary services. We don't really seem ever as a council to really report to councillors how much 106 money there is, what percentage we're spending, what percentage we're returning, what we can do with it, where we can use it. And it just, to me, seems really relevant to involve that in our whole budget proposal.
Councillor Watson, did you want to?
Thank you for your question. Section 106 is very dedicated to the planning application that it's in. So it's not a case of like there's going to be £200,000 for roads. It will be £200,000 for highways that is associated to a development in that ward. So you can't just take it and just spread it off all over the place. It's dedicated into the ward. And it's normally to enhance that development, or any problems that's happened, any damage that has been done to the roads because of the development, that sort of thing. There is community money, it's very limited. That's done through the community forums. That's why we're sitting down and doing all of the community forum stuff. And then you've got an element of education on health that we can't touch anyway. And that's why I raised last night to the NHS people that actually you've got a lot of money sitting in Section 106 and you're doing nothing on your properties. And they can use that because it's dedicated within that particular agreement for a health centre redecoration or refurbishment in Corringham. So they can use it on that particular one. So you can't use Section 106 as a saving. It's not really used as a saving either. So or put it into works that then produces a saving. Because that's what you're looking at, aren't you? Is actually using it to do a road, and then that road becomes you allocate it into a budget, and then that becomes a saving. Can't do that either. It is particular for what you want for that particular development or that area or that agreement.
Might be straying again budget, a bit. Really. Sorry, I think we might on that. We're probably straying a bit from these specific savings, but. Again, valid point. I know there's some work ongoing, isn't there, to look at where the 106 money is and how we can better utilise it.
So yes, Chair, there's a lot of work ongoing, and it is going back to place ONS on the 3rd of December.
Excellent. Thank you. Hopefully that will answer a lot of... Yeah. Councillor Spate, then Councillor Byrne.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm interested in the, and it sort of follows on from my question at full council last time out, rationalisation of senior management structure, and I'm a little bit intrigued by this and the figures, which is talking about 3 assistant director roles and a cost of £422,000. I've looked at the last recorded salaries of assistant directors, and you can perm any 3 from I think 5 that operate under place. And while I accept there's on costs in terms of national insurance, pension, etc., I don't quite see how that stacks up, but I'm sure somebody can prove it. What concerns me is that we're talking here about deleting 3 assistant director posts and creating a newly titled Chief Operations Officer role. Heads of service would then report directly to that Chief Operations Officer. There's no real specification of what that Chief Operations Officer is responsible for. The second part of it is that the proposal seeks to create a new role, Chief Officer Place. Now, I'm struggling to see what the Chief Operations Officer can do that the Chief Officer Place can't do, and where the differential between those 2 roles is. I think we have garnered a reputation for creating fancy titles and unnecessary roles, and I just would like some explanation of what all that involves. But perhaps even more importantly than that, what strikes me is it says here, delivery commenced the 1st of April 2025, delivery completed April 2026. So we're not going to get the full benefit of that saving through the year if we're only going to start it. Well, I don't know exactly how it's going to work. I'd like some clarity, because it strikes me, I'm sure some of these people are probably on interim posts with no fixed timescale anyway. If we went January, February, March, before we moved to the 1st of April, we could give them 3 months' notice and probably get shut earlier and start the recruitment process, if you like. So why are we hanging about and not making that saving now?
I'll answer that, Councillor Spate. So this is a rationalisation of the senior managers that are currently reporting to me. So in place, what we currently have is a combination of chief officers and ADs. So we've almost introduced an additional tier of management. So we're stripping out the layer of the ADs and we're making those AD posts into chief officer posts. And so we're replacing their ADs with chief officer posts. We've already got one that's permanently recruited to, and we're introducing in total, we'll have 3. So those chief officers are responsible for those 3 pillars that we have in place. So we have the chief planning officer, then we have the chief operations, interim chief currently is an interim chief operations lead, and that's covering all the clean and green, all the waste services and all the highway services. That's what that role is going to do. And then on the other end, we've got the current chief, interim chief officer that covers housing, economic growth and development and regeneration. So at the structure in place will be exec director, chief officers, no ADs. What we didn't want to do is introduce another layer. With regards to the latest paragraph, we're now no longer going forward with a chief officer role for place. That's going to be more of a coordination role at lower grade.
Sorry, Claire, can you just clarify that again? So at the moment, it says here quite clearly, you're going to replace 3 assistant director posts.
We're going to delete 3 assistant director posts.
Sorry, you're going to delete 3 director posts, and then you're going to create a chief operations officer. And then in addition, you're going to create a chief officer place. So you're replacing 3 with 2.
We're not going to go forward with the chief officer of place.
That's not what it says in front of us here, Claire.
I understand that, but we made that decision at the beginning of the week, so we're no longer going to go forward with that. So there'd be a bigger saving.
Sorry, Claire. Chair.
Can I just bring in...
Chair, we can't have... We've just had it on one hand, a decision that was made a couple of days ago and brought to this. We've now had, it's a decision made a couple of days that we're doing it. How many times do we as councillors have to bang on about giving late reports and misinformation? Because clearly, as what Claire, who's a fantastic officer, and I'm not really, I feel a bit embarrassed about having to dig her out, but what she's just said is not what's in front of us.
Agree. Dr. Smith, can you
Chair,
provide
just to clarify and to also reiterate the point you made before, the issue before you is about the saving. The structure in place, as in other places, will be subject to the decision taken by the General Services Committee. And the report will be going there about the detail of the structure for General Services Committee to discuss. So it's not appropriate for Claire to be trying to explain the detail of that when it's not yet been agreed. Overall, the reduction, the amount of posts that are being taken out, irrespective of what you call them and where they sit and report, amounts to a saving of 120,000 in 25-26. The question, obviously, if I think it was part of Councillor Spate's question, was how do we arrive at the £120,000 saving? That can be explained, but I'd rather we stayed away from the detail of the structure when that's a matter for the General Services Committee.
Okay.
Chair, I'm really, with the greatest respect, Dr. Smith, I'm not happy with that because, you know, if I wanted to play start second guessing, I'd go down the spiritual centre where they've got a medium night and they've probably got about as much clue as what's going on as what we have. And it's just, we can't have it. It's no good. We're here to discuss the minutiae of detail. We're going down to £16,000 savings, which I'm sure that doesn't class as peanuts. So, you know, please do not treat us with patronising things that we're getting. We want proper detail. And it's no good saying we're putting a presentation towards you to debate, but then we're actually going to decide on that debate at General Services Committee. That's not what we're here for. We're here to go through this budget in detail and hear what's going to happen.
Councillor Kent, did you want to, you indicated, did you want to add anything?
I was just going to make a similar point, actually, that the finite detail will be decided by General Services on whatever it is, the 3rd of December. But I do take Neil's point that the narrative behind this could be clearer about the process, that we're agreeing a global saving with detail to be agreed through a General Services Committee. And I think that's something we take away and reflect on for future.
Okay, before we move on, Councillor Watson, did you want to add anything?
No, I was going to say about the narrative as well, but equally, Neil, I thought you'd been really happy because you're always moaning about we need to cut high posts, and you just have, and made 120 grand saving.
I don't know what we are because it's got to go to General Services yet.
Okay. Point noted, I think. Valid point. Councillor Byrne.
I got a pretty weak question to follow that. Hurry up, yeah. Well, just quickly for Councillor Arnold on 106 money. The first meeting we had on place, in 2 minutes, it was 106 money, and then 5 minutes 106 money. We've had, for the 4 months we've been there, we have talked nothing but 106 money. It's top of the agenda, top of the list. Claire's worked hard on it. Lee's worked hard on it. I've done a little bit on it, and it's going to our meeting in December, and we're going to have all the nuts and bolts explained, and we're going to know how we're going to open the treasure chest, where we're going to do it, and where we're going to put. So I think we've come a long, long way on 106 money. So that's my question is. Oh. No, that's just it. That's just clarifying 106 money. Reduction with my health and safety hat on. Reduction to PPE. Have we risk assessed that it doesn't increase risk to our staff by cutting out PPE, please?
Yes, absolutely. Again, this was something that, when you see it, you think, hold on a minute, are our staff going to have the protective equipment that they need? The answer is absolutely. The reason for this reduction is that it's just reducing the variety of PPE that's being offered. So I think there is a veritable shop of over merchandising of items. So I think that you could go in there and have a jacket and an extra large jacket, extra warm jacket, jacket without sleeves, jacket with. So I think that there's been a purchasing of excess kind of style items. What it means is that staff are going to have the stuff that they need, but we're not going to buy any additional items, and we really want staff to kind of look after their items. So if you lose, we don't want you to lose your jacket because we don't want to keep replacing it. Just care for your things, and they'll be replaced when needs be. But the shop element of PPE is now closed.
Thank you. I don't think I've got any other ONS members indicated. I know Councillor Jeffries has a question, but I'm just going to quickly rattle through some questions that I've got. Yeah, I've seen him. PLA1 talks specifically savings from a rent review. It talks about evaluating peppercorn rents. My understanding of most peppercorn rents is that they're generally paid by third sector community groups, which can often provide a very valuable service to the community. Can we have an assurance that we're not going to hammer them?
Thank you for your question, Chair. I mean, basically, no. The problem that I've got is I can't tell you which. There's 10 properties. I can tell you that there's 10 properties that we're talking about in terms of this cost saving. But I can't tell you which ones because we're in negotiations at the moment, so that's commercially sensitive. So I hope that you accept that that's
Yeah, I don't want to know the
case.
specific details. It's not for this committee, but I just want the third sector and community groups often provide a service to the council, which if they didn't, we might have incur a cost in providing that service. So really quick assurance: are the voluntary sector, the third sector, are they safe from this proposal? We're not going to incur an expense as a result of potentially putting out of operation community groups that provide a valuable service.
We are not, no.
Thank you. So That's what I wanted to know. Thank you. So PLA02, it's a proposal to recruit an energy manager. I'm struggling to understand, if I'm honest, why we would want to create a post with a salary of £65,000 solely for that function. I can't believe that with the officer expertise that we have and the number of very highly paid officers at this council, we can't, between the existing pool of staff, come up with a strategy that makes energy efficiencies. Why would we need to recruit somebody specifically to do that? My concern is there's only so much fat you can cut off the bone with this. If you employ someone, they might make a saving in year one, they might make a saving in year two, but I cannot believe that year after year we're going to make sufficient savings in energy to cover the cost of that salary and make a saving thereafter. So I can't accept that that is a valid proposal. I'd just be grateful for your comments on that.
Thank you for your question, Chair. Well, we know from the experience of other councils that having a dedicated energy manager with those specific skill sets does generate cost savings. So obviously we're hoping to make 50,000 next year, and then we would expect that person to be going through and making more cost savings. So other councils do this. We used to have a dedicated energy manager. They can help reduce overhead costs, meet sustainability targets and enhance operational efficiency. So we expect the role to pay for itself next year and yield 50,000 in the first year. And then, as I say, from experience in other organisations like Essex County Council, for example, you would expect further cost savings to follow. So the kind of things that the energy manager might be doing is energy audits, optimising energy contracts, changing the way that we buy our energy so that we've got the flexibility to buy in blocks when prices are cheap, can yield a lot of cost savings. So those are just a few of the things that we'll be looking to do. And we've got clear evidence that it's worked in other organisations. So I'm actually confident about delivering this cost saving.
Okay, my concern is you've compared this to Essex County Council, which is a very large county council with much larger suite of assets. We're a small unitary authority which has just built a building, one of the selling points of which was that it would be energy efficient. We've introduced a central management system for our street lighting, which is one of our biggest energy outlays, so we can control that now. We've done things in-house, which suggests to me, as a small local authority, we really don't need this post. So I don't think you've got anything more to add to that, but I do think this is not, I think it's an unnecessary expenditure, which I can't believe that year on year we're going to, that post holder is going to make sufficient savings or identify sufficient opportunities for there to be any particularly real budget saving there. And one of the things I want to propose is a recommendation from the committee, which we'll vote on later, that Cabinet properly review that, and rather than just say it works in other local authorities, come up with a bit more evidence as to why we think that post is necessary here, and what particular, you know, how sure are we that that is going to realise savings year on year, which are going to justify that?
Well, we are fairly certain. I mean, sort of, we should be seeing a change of direction towards more sustainable energy. So we're expecting that having a dedicated energy manager will give us the ability to gain grants, further grants and funding that we'll be able to invest to save. This is sort of like quite a few proposals that are on the table tonight, an invest to save proposal that we've looked at. I mean, I mentioned Essex County Council, that was the one that was given to me as an example, but there, you know, it happens in a lot of councils and they do yield cost savings, you know, and as we move towards different energy sources, more renewable energy sources, I think, you know, there's really enormous potential for this role to take advantage of any grants that are coming through? I mean, obviously we've already had some in terms that we've used effectively in terms of decarbonisation. So we're expecting
sorry
this
to
to be...
interrupt. I don't want, but you've hit the nail on the head. We've done it. We've done that without an energy manager. I don't want to get into a debate about a specific role. My view is it's unnecessary. Why can't we pay Essex County Council or another county council to do that role for us without specifically employing somebody? I don't want to get into it here and now. The point I'm making is I think it's an unnecessary expenditure, which I don't think is justified. I'm going to make a recommendation for the committee to vote on at the end. Simply asking Cabinet to come up with, some further justification. You've given an answer, and we know your position on it, which is fine. I don't expect you to comment on that anymore unless you've got anything new to add. But
Well, I think on the point of why can't we just pay Essex County Council to do it for us, then we wouldn't be investing to save, would we? We'd be paying.
we would, because it would be a one-off cost rather than employing somebody who becomes an employee of this council on a fairly sizable salary, who then year on year has to find sufficient savings to justify the existence of their salary. I'm not going to take any more questions on this or any more comments. Sorry, because it's not the most pressing issue that we've got to consider tonight, and time is moving on. I'm simply saying that I think as a committee we want some justification around that outside of this meeting as to why that's necessary. You might be right. It might actually prove to be something that is completely valid, but I think there are unanswered questions which I think we need to look at in a bit more detail. Councillor Watson.
Okay. I don't know if Claire wants to comment further, but I mean, in terms of, wanting more detail, then obviously, further scrutiny as we move forward is a perfectly reasonable request. I don't know if Claire can offer any more detail at this point. Councillor Watson's going to do it.
Thank you, Chair. We did have an energy officer here, and it was cut. So the post they want to bring back in. But the energy officer is not just about what you do in this building. It's every single one of our council buildings, according to our HRA as well. And it's about retrospecting and retrofitting. It's also about making sure it's sustainable and bringing the new technologies into the HRA as well as into every single council building, including community halls, everything that we own. And so they do get a return back on that. And that is very widely known and dated across loads of local authorities. So I'm just saying, we did originally have one, but we cut the post. And I think we're at the time where we're getting more and more into electric charge points and electric things, that we just need an energy officer back who's got that capability and also got those qualifications to actually do that, which, to be honest with you, is an area of expertise that a lot of officers don't have.
No, I agree. And again, I don't want to labour this particular one too much, but the question I've got is there are lots of local authorities who will have an energy manager, but there are lots of local authorities which are extremely, much larger than us and have a much larger asset of buildings, and I could see why it does. Don't want to, we're not going to turn this into a debate about an energy manager. I just think that I've highlighted some things we have done already without this officer. And I think we can. So. We're all going to get on buses when we leave here, aren't we, members, and go home, and on trains. So, I think not. So, look, I'm moving on from this one. Yeah, okay. Well, I know Councillor Sisterson is a leading example, but the rest of us, I don't think we could bang the green drum when we're all going to get in our cars and go home. PLA 06, again, a relatively small saving here, but once it's a net income of £17,000. Again, really brief answer. That's a very small saving. How sure can we be we're not, again, creating another post that effectively, after a few years, I mean, when I was a portfolio holder, I was told that when we carry out enforcement, it works fine in the first few months or the first year, but as people begin to understand our enforcement regime, they tend not to commit offences which we can issue a fine for. So £17,000, very small income here. Have you assessed the risk that essentially we create another post which then doesn't bring in the income to sustain itself, or basically the cost outstrips the income?
Councillor, that's falling under me. this is to really deal with a real bugbear, I'm sure it definitely is for me, but for others, where companies decide to do their works over the weekend. So if they have to do their works during the week, they have to apply it to us as a local authority to get permission to do those works, and there's a procedure around that. A number of companies get around this, to be very frank, by saying that there's emergency works, and they appear in the borough on Friday afternoon under emergency works and take over the weekend, cause road closures, etc. So this is about ensuring that we are able to issue fixed penalty notices for those companies that are carrying out this work at weekends and trying to get around that. We are not having it. It's a disruption to...
I'm going to have to interrupt.
Sorry.
Very laudable, but why is it in the budget? Why is it here as a saving? What it seeks to achieve, I've been a portfolio holder, I completely agree, but it's been put in here as a role that is going to produce income. I'm not questioning the merits of the role, I agree with you. Just said there are individuals and organisations that know what our enforcement regime are and do what they do to try and circumnavigate that. What I'm asking is, that's a very small saving. I've also been told by officers that when we commence an enforcement regime, very often those who contravene it soon get to know when we are enforcing. They don't commit so many contraventions. My concern is that that very small income won't be in next year, 2 years, it won't be an income there at all. We'll be paying more for that individual than we're actually getting in the fixed penalty notices that they're issuing over the weekend period.
I understand what you're saying, and I think that that's probably why we need a person that is flexible and able to adapt to the company's learning, oh, this is what they're doing, when we need to change our own, we need to change our own ways of working. Hopefully, what will happen is that the companies will stop doing this and act in accordance to the way that they should act. We can put the staff member on a fixed-term contract, for example. If the companies are abiding by the rules, then that post can be reviewed and that can be reflected. But at this point, it is causing significant disruption, we think, for roads and residents, that it is worth putting in this saving and that person, but it can definitely be reviewed.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffries, you indicated, and then Councillor Spates.
Thank you, Chair. This is regarding PLA 09, the garden waste collections. I mean, I'm pleased the uptake in subscriptions has been so high. I mean, that's great. It was something that was introduced previously. I wonder if the portfolio has given any consideration to giving a discount to pensioners who are struggling to make ends meet by giving them a 50% discount on their brown bin collection. I think they'd see an uptake. After all, it's mainly it's mainly pensioners, older people that live in some of our properties in the borough that have substantial gardens.
I wish I could. It's definitely something that I've instructed officers to look at, not just for pensioners, but other, communities and groups that, we would like to offer discounts to. Me personally, I would absolutely love to. Unfortunately, we've discussed quite a lot tonight the scale of the savings that need to be made, not just this year, but year on year. I really wish that I could do that. It's something that I personally want to do, and I'm sorry that I can't. But I can say, as you will see, Councillor, from the plans in front of you, we are listening to residents as much as we can and making savings where we can, and that's why we're extending the service period from 46 weeks to 52 weeks at no additional cost for residents. That is obviously a cost for us, but that is a small cost that we can absorb. We just can't absorb the level of cost that it would be for a 50% discount to pensioners, I'm afraid.
Chair, perhaps. Yeah, I'm not on the ONS, but perhaps you might consider that as a recommendation. To put to members to vote.
So, if I'm right, then you're asking that the committee consider recommending that Cabinet look into the feasibility of a 50% or a reduction for pensioners and to report back on that. Okay, well, because you've got some nodding heads.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair, but we have looked into it and we can share the financial implications that it would have. We can email that to you. There doesn't need to be any further investigation as I asked for it to be carried out. So I'm very happy for that to be shared with the committee and the implications shared before any consideration takes place.
Okay, well, we'll pick that up at the end, but that's a recommendation. If you can, I think I don't think we're asking you to do it. I think it's the request is that you review it, and if you've got that information already, then I think you can satisfy that recommendation, but we'll pick that up at the end. Councillor Spades.
Yeah, very briefly, Chair. On the street works PLA 06, I'm probably like yourself quite baffled, because I actually reported something in my ward a few weeks ago on exactly this circumstance, and the team went out, checked out the work that was done on the Monday. They knew who the people were who broke the rules, and they issued fixed penalty notices. So I don't see why we need that. But secondly, I would just like to say you made a recommendation relating to PLA 02, which I would, if you need a seconder for it, I would happily second that, because I think it's a barking mad scheme. But if they decide to have that post in place, I just hope within the job description it says that one of the things they have to do is turn the lights out in this building at night, also switch off all the water heaters that keep running 24 hours and all the extractor fans that run for 24 hours in this building, because we're just burning money on our doorstep. So that's a saving they can make straight away.
Absolutely. I don't think we need a specific officer to tell us that. One of the savings proposals last year was to have a central management system to control the air conditioning in this place, which has never happened. But okay, Councillor Fletcher, then Councillor.
Chair, I've forgotten what I was going to ask, so I think you can move on.
In that case, Councillor Cockshaw, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to PLA 09, I remember last year under this saving proposal, that the conversations were asked about direct debits, and we were blankly told you cannot issue under direct debits and pay monthly schemes. We don't have that capacity in the council, even though it's operated under council tax and other departments. Obviously, we mentioned that we want to have improve uptake, and we want to offer the direct debit option. How close are we actually to getting that work? Because we were told last year it wasn't feasible, and we punted it down. Obviously, that's a really big thing for some residents. They want to be able to pay it over a set time or over different periods. That may help further uptake from what we've received. Just how close are we to actually achieving that in next year's budget?
Yes, we will be introducing direct debit payment option for a yearly direct debit, an annual subscription scheme via direct debit. Yes, again, it's a very important issue. It is something that is kind of key to people being able to pay for this service easily. So yes.
I know we just part of some other councillors last year discussed the monthly payments for some residents who can't pay it outright in an annual subscription. Obviously, that may mean you're bound by a contract to deliver that, just like other agreements that you make for services. But that may actually, is that actually an option that it can even be considered, or is it just not deemed feasible still?
At the moment, it is just an annual direct debit. Again, it was something looked into monthly, but also quarterly. Unfortunately, there is quite a high risk of non-payment and debt recovery. So, for example, we're covering, all year round. If residents, for example, got to November and was like, I'm not really using this very much, I'm going to cancel my direct debit, then we wouldn't have the full amount and the full saving. So at the moment, it's just an annual option, but it's definitely something, as the system and our direct debit systems get smarter, it's definitely something I think that we should always consider as part of our garden waste service and other services in the council, actually.
No, did you want to come One final thing. I'm worried as we talk about rolling out direct debit systems per directorate. Obviously, is it not something we can do as a pan organisation? We doing that. Every directorate does a different system. Obviously, we're duplicating work streams again. We're duplicating fees and charges when we get that money transferred to us. Sorry, it may be jumping now to Councillor Worrell, but I think that's just a wider point actually to have that conversation piece of if we're going to be paying service charges, that's another saving in terms of we're not duplicating work and administrative fees.
Yes, Councillor, and I can see Councillor Worrell, yeah, it's coming up under the PERN savings. She's nodding vociferously, so I think that that's a yes.
Thank you. Councillor Cecil.
Thank you, Chair. This is an idea that may not give you a big saving, but it will help some of our residents. I had a resident who wanted a glare shield fitted to his lamp, which was the previous technology, and he was told you will have a dimmable light. I don't know whether he's taken that up now, but can we give the opportunity to other residents to have customise their light if they're one of our residents who works night shift?
Just to clarify, there's street lights outside someone's house.
Yep, that's it, sorry, beg your pardon. Street lights. Yeah, they used to have glare shields fitted if they were night shift workers and they needed to dim the light specifically to their bedroom windows. And we used to give them glare shields, but it had maintenance costs. So we were told when the dimmable lights come in, you will be able to customise it. I'm just saying, can we now offer this benefit to other residents, which may be a saving, to dim the lights outside their property?
Lights are going to be dimmed, obviously as part of the saving. They have been dimmed already, and they are part of an existing, part of a saving that will come forward. I don't know about individual lights outside of individual houses, because I think that would probably take quite a lot of maintenance. But I'm going to go away and learn a bit more about it, Councillor.
Perhaps somebody could give Councillor Cecil a fuller answer outside of the meeting.
I will absolutely do that.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you.
I just want to go back to PLO2 and this energy management, because this is really annoying me, and I agree with you, Ben, sorry, Councillor Manny, but isn't that the job that facilities management should be doing and should be skilled at and trained at? Why are we putting someone else when we're actually paying someone, or we should be, have the skills in facilities management? So I cannot see why we've got to put in another place when, if the facilities management have got skills, then let's get people that got the skills and use that money. It's just a waste. Year one, we're going to lose 15 grand on them anyway, and the wages are always going to be more than what we're saving. Facilities management, get them the skills, let them do the job. Why are we not using facilities management for this role?
First of all,
I completely agree. We're on the same page here. That's why I think we're going to pick this up as a recommendation, and hopefully we'll get some more justification. I don't think we need to. You're right, and I completely agree. But I don't think. Yeah, I don't think we need any further answer on that. You've given a comprehensive response, I think, from your perspective. I don't,
you don't want me to answer the question?
I think,
okay.
No, we want you to answer, I want you to answer the question, but we want you to answer the question with a specific recommendation.
Well, I mean, first of all, we're finding it hard to recruit to facility management posts, and we don't have anybody in facilities management with the appropriate skills or qualifications to be able to do that role. That is the answer.
That means I've got more qualifications in your facilities management, and that's crazy, isn't it? That is unbelievable.
Right, moving on, Councillor Leakey.
Thank you, Chair. I want to refer to PLA 19 on selective licensing. Going through the report, it states that landlords can get license for PLA 19. Selective licensing. We don't know, okay.
Page 58.
Page 58. So my question is this. Is there any cost to the landlord to get the license, and what are we proposing to save?
There will be a cost, yes.
And how much would that cost to the landlord, please?
We haven't completely finished identifying that, but we probably, a bit reluctant to say at the moment, if I'm honest, but we're probably looking at around about the £650 fee over a 5-year period.
Is that going to impact investors coming into Thurrock to, for renting? Is that going to impact on renting in Thurrock?
It should do. It's a very low cost per month, very low cost over a 5-year period. I mean, you're looking at something in the region of £10 a month.
Thank you.
Which will be passed on to the tenant. Whilst we're on that, because I did have a question on that, but as we've moved on to that saving, you said you haven't fully determined what level of charge you would seek to impose for the license. I'm just interested in how we've arrived at that. I do understand they're largely ballpark figures, but if you haven't determined what level of fee is going to be attached to the license, how have we arrived at that figure?
It's based on that figure I've given you.
Right, so...
Sorry, have I got that wrong?
I'll take this question. So basically what we're looking at the minute, we can't finalise the figures because we're waiting for the outcome of the boundary review. And at that time, then we can say how many properties we're going to include in the selective licensing scheme. Year one is going to be a pilot. We're going to come in under the 20%. Once we come in under the 20% of properties, of rented properties in the borough, we don't have to go to Secretary of State for permission. So once we know the boundaries, the wards, then we'll look at the figures. But at the minute, the figures are based on 3,000 properties, 800 charge. But that could be reduced. And that's 2.4 million. With costs taken out, that leaves us at 1.756.
Just unclear, why is the boundary review relevant?
Because of the wards boundaries may change. And we've got to choose wards to use for the schemes.
So you can't do it on a
It's a
geographical area, it has to be on a ward-by-ward basis?
Yeah, we're going to adopt a ward-by-ward basis, yeah.
Okay,
So
and just
we'll
one
be able to finalise that in the next 3 weeks.
One final question on this. I mean, if landlords don't comply, what presumably can we enforce? And have we got the capability to do that? We're talking about potentially 12,000 properties. I know they probably won't all be encompassed, but what capacity have we got to commence lots and lots and lots of individual enforcement actions if we need to?
There will be staffing. There are staffing figures built into these costs. So that is a net saving, the 1.7 million. The gross saving, then we'll be taking off the cost of the staff. So we estimate in the region of £250,000 for staff.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from anybody? No, can I just quickly ask a couple of others then? In relation to PLA 12, have our recycling figures increased in the last 12 months?
I'll have to come back to you with the answer, Chair. I'm not sure the figures at the minute.
Okay, because we were told that one of the selling points for bi-weekly residue collection was that it would drive up recycling rates. If that hasn't happened, I really don't want to be disrespectful, but the question then asks, that's quite a fundamental selling point of that we needed to increase recycling, and it was almost a given that if we moved to fortnightly, we would see our recycling rates go up significantly. If that hasn't happened, I suppose we need to look behind the professional advice that we're getting from officers that gives us some kind of confidence that we can achieve this as well. So appreciate you need to come back to us, but I would specifically like to know whether our recycling figures have gone up, because we were as good as assured they would do. We haven't managed to do it by moving to bi-weekly collections. For me, it calls into question our ability to deliver this. So, okay, you don't have the figures, that's fine. But if you could come back, I'd be grateful.
They're released annually because they're calculated on the waste data flow figures, so they're not due to be released yet, so they're released annually.
Thank you. And PLA 18, can you just give a bit more explanation around what that is? It's not entirely clear where that saving's coming from. I mean, I thought the majority of these kind of works were funded from either the ITB or the highways maintenance grant allocation, which comes directly from government and is essentially ring fence. What exactly is this saving and where's it coming from?
The saving, Councillor, is from optimising operational processes, so working more efficiently.
So it says the budget reduction may result in fewer work orders being completed. Does that mean a reduction in highways works and repairs?
At the moment, we are repairing, for example, 100% of our reported potholes each month, which, you know, as we all know, we all track, is a very important measure. The team are still confident that the efficiencies from better ways of working will still deliver being able to repair 100% of any reported issues each month.
How are the efficiencies going to be delivered? It doesn't look like it's a reduction in staff, so where are the efficiencies coming from exactly? Is it literally a cut to the budget that we allocate for works, or a saving from the way we do them? It reads to me that we're simply cutting a budget, which is highways or road repairs.
That's correct.
So it's a cut to the amount of money we allocate to...
That's correct.
Okay. Well, that gives me concerns, because we already know that there are tremendous pressures on our highways network. We struggle to maintain them as we are, and we're proposing to cut that budget by £100,000, which I think is counterproductive. It's a straight cut to a service. I do understand difficult decisions have to be made, but if it then reduces our capacity to meet our obligations as a highways authority, it's counterproductive. So again, we'll pick this up as a recommendation. I would ask that Cabinet fully review that and ask whether or not, bearing in mind we've miraculously been able to come up with a £125,000 saving from elsewhere when something was unpalatable, can we look at offsetting this from some other savings? I'm just disconcerted that it's a clear cut to the highways maintenance budget.
Councillor, if I may come back in there, the team are very confident that they will still be able to deliver the level of care and deliver the level of service even though this saving has to happen. I think I'm also concerned that, as the leader and chief executive and our portfolio holder for finance have said, you know, when we take money out from here, we have to find it from elsewhere. And these have been gone through line by line to have a look at where these savings can be done. And we are reassured, me as an individual and us as a cabinet, that the team are confident that the service can be maintained at a good level. Also, on a separate item, Chair, I've also got the figures for the previous question with regards to the reduction, the service change for garden waste for over 60s. If it would be helpful to share, I've got the figures.
I don't think we'll take it now. I think that question's been posed. I think we're going to deal with that by way of a recommendation.
Okay, just mindful of the number of savings that we're hoping to remove from this budget are kind of growing and growing.
We're not asking them to be removed. I think you've misunderstood. We haven't actually read what the recommendations are. What we're asking Cabinet to do is, and we'll come on to the wording, is really to review those and come back with further reassurances or explanation. We're not sitting there saying, take that out, take that out, take that out. I think this is the first time where I think I'm alluding to the fact Cabinet should take this out, but I'm just mindful of the fact that earlier on when we were looking at another proposed saving, which was very quickly taken out, in a very, very short space of time, we managed to find £125,000. Well, if you delete the silly idea for an energy manager, there's £65,000 right there. I'd rather have our roads maintained and fixed than someone sitting in this office looking at whether lights can be turned off. So all we're asking, we'll go over the wording of the recommendations later, but I think we're asking Cabinet to look at this and think, can they not come up with finding this saving from elsewhere? £65,000 we've just identified. I'd rather have roads maintained than an energy manager, but as I say, we'll deal with that as a recommendation. Any further questions before we move on? No? Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the pan organisation. I've got no idea who's dealing with these, but the pan organisational savings.
Chair. So this will be split between me and Councillor Muldowney. So if I do the two that I'm responsible for, which will be the strategic commissioning and the review of the business support, and then we'll leave the big ticket item from Councillor Fletcher on digital for the last item of the evening. And then Councillor Coxall might get what he needs out of that too. Is that okay with you, Chair?
Fine.
Okay, right. So the first one is if I look at the Executive Support Service, which will be a £209,000 saving. So this is a review of admin support of the executive leadership team. The proposal creates a new centralised model that supports the Chief Executive's senior leadership restructure implemented in September 2023. The review will take a phased approach, with this proposal launching first. Phase 1 will review the support of members, executive leaders and the leadership group, which is currently devolved within directorates, bringing together a centralised team, reducing management posts and realigning roles to ensure support is structured, standardised and there is adequate capacity to enable a drive for change and improvement. The traditional approach to providing support must evolve to meet the demands of a more streamlined and technology-focused organisation. Phase 2 will focus on the wider role of the administration and supports across the council and is currently just at the scoping place. But what I would like to be mindful, Chair, is that this is really sensitive, and that these savings are people's jobs. Negotiations have already started with the unions, but we are confident that the initial savings can be achieved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Worrell. I'm going to throw this out to all members. Do any members have any questions? Comments? No? Okay, I mean, I know this is something that the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee has taken a great deal of interest in and will continue to do so. You're right, there are sensitivities around it, so if there's no specific questions, I think we'll move on. And
Chair. Yeah,
I know this will come back before the committee.
Absolutely, and we'll do all we can to, to be as respectful and to, to make it as painless as possible. But we do need to be a smaller council, and a smaller council means, unfortunately, less staff. So my second one is a 200k saving. So we're aware that we need to make improvements to our commissioning and how we to bring our services in line with our objectives as set out in the corporate plan that we all bought into here, and to make sure that we're always achieving the best value for our money. Officers have completed a stock take of our practices and appointed a commissioning specialist to lead on a reset, innovate and transform programme across the council. This work will improve our processes across governance, giving us an oversight of all of our spending on our services and to upskill our staff. What we will do is deliver these savings. We will get a grip on how we commission across this council. So what we've done is we've engaged a commissioning specialist to complete a stock take for us, and this happened in October. The stock take found that we are inconsistent in our approach to commissioning, that it's not well understood across the council. This has led to many missed opportunities to save money and provide better services to our residents. Different parts of the council commission differently. This is about one way of working in the council and standardising the way that we commission. The programme will tighten up our processes, produce a clear commissioning strategy and put in place proper governance on spending, and all of this by making sure that, we have proper processes in and that different parts of the council are not doing it very differently and then giving out different lengths, according to how they see it. This will bring in significant savings, and the directorate are sure that, they can meet these savings and further. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So I'll ask again. Sorry, are there any questions? Yep, Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Councillor Worrell. Just quickly about strategic commissioning. Obviously, I appreciate we really do need. I've noticed it when I was in Cabinet last year. Commissioning was all over the place. It was every department did it differently. It was very difficult. I would be dealing stuff with adults, and then suddenly I'd go and think, oh, it must be similar in another department, and it wasn't. It was completely different. Obviously, I'm just mindful, in particular, the impact it has on adults, and there's a large procurement and commission contract we're trying to do about care is the way that contract and how that commissioning model is going forward is actually meant to be an evolving model. So the model changes and we can update with people that we've procured with. Mindful if we start adopting one strategy for all levels of commissioning, there's these pet projects that we're looking to build over a long 10-year period of time that may get inevitably impacted. I just want the assurance that if we do look down one model for commissioning, we're actually not going to hamper innovation where we've got departments that are actually leading and wanting to do something really clever, working to actually reduce overhead costs, working with our partners.
Thank you. And I think that's why it's important that we have brought in a specialist to be able to work with us. So we've already commissioned somebody to come in and start that work, and they start within the next couple of weeks. And it is about that, making sure that, you know, we don't stop innovation, but at the same time, we don't have everybody going off on tangents and not know what anybody's signing up for and to.
Thank you. Happy with that answer? Yep. Are there any other questions or comments? No? Okay, thank you, Councillor Worrell. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the slides. Thank you to everybody who's... Oh, we? What's that time? Do you have to? Councillor Mogdoney.
It's the last one. I mean, we have got a plan on a page for this, so I will just open to questions, but being mindful of Councillor Manoir's point earlier, I would just like to explain that AI stands for artificial intelligence. VA means we're talking about voice automation, and RPA is robotic process automation. And FTE is full-time equivalent. I think I've got all the acronyms there. But I mean, if there are things that people don't understand, I will try to explain. I'm not an IT expert, so I may have to hand over to Marta, but open to any questions.
Councillor Spate.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, let me say I admire your bravery in pinning hopes of a savings of £300,000 on an IT project in this council, given our complete failure, or not complete failure, but regular failure to actually do the very simple jobs. I hope my fears are proved wrong. What concerns me a little bit is a sort of lack of information in terms of reference to HRA. So one assumes that will be the call centre dealing with things like billing and whatever like that, not necessarily the service centre, because I believe we're committed to the service centre with our partner Mears. So a little bit of clarification around that might be helpful. We're looking to lose 24 people. I presume we would describe them as call centre staff. I'm quite amazed we've got that many, because every time I've tried to ring the council, you have to wait an age to get to speak to somebody. But there you go. If it's 24, it's 24. In terms of, we've spoken repeatedly at many meetings of various committees, and including full council, about our concern that we're racing full on into the world of digital and AI and whatever, and repeatedly and everywhere we go, and it shouldn't be a reason for not doing everything, but we have to remember the demographic of this borough. And however clever we may come up with a system, I am extremely concerned that A, I don't think we'll be good enough to do it, because I just think experience tells me that. But B, are we really taking into account the needs of the widespread demographic group that this council serves, because I'm not sure, you know, I don't know what we're actually going to leave in place. This is telling us what we're taking away. What are we going to leave in place that deals with those people who cannot and are incapable of engaging with AI and all other automated systems?
Thank you, Councillor Spate, for your question, and I do take on board. It's certainly something that I've raised in the past about digital exclusion. I will come back to that, and I think I'll probably go to Marta for the figures on that, because the figures that she presented recently to corporate ONS show that we do actually have quite a large demand within our population for more digitalisation. So, for example, when I go and visit my friend in Brighton, I don't have to find 50p to put in a parking meter. I can sit on her couch and extend my parking, you know, without getting out of bed or without getting off the couch. So there's lots of people who are actually want us to have more digitalisation. They want to be able to pay their bills. They want to be able to report things online, etc., at whatever time is convenient for them. So while I do take your point about digital exclusion, and it's certainly something that I've raised and we talked about and we will be keeping under review, the whole idea of this digital transformation is that it will release more humans, if you like, to actually deal better with the people who are genuinely digitally excluded. So just that point. If I can come to your point about contact centre. So the processes that have been mapped, so there's been a big piece of work that's gone that underpins this cost saving. So 130 contact centre, but not just contact centre, but service processes. So this is across the entire council. We're not just talking about contact centre staff, have been identified, they've been mapped, and they've been approved. So what the team has looked at in very great detail is what processes can be automated end to end, so completely taking humans out of the need to be involved in that. And what processes still need maybe a front-facing person that is dealing with the public, but back-end processes can be automated to make efficiencies in terms of staff's time. From that, we've identified that just under 24 full-time equivalent posts can be reduced. Now, obviously, I can't talk about specific posts. The cost savings associated with this, I just need to make it clear, because I think there's been a general misunderstanding about this. It won't be realised through the digital team, but it will be realised through services. So once the processes are in place that take over some of these jobs that people are doing at the moment, then services need to look at you know, how they can restructure. And obviously we would always move forward and look at how to redeploy staff, we'd be looking at deleting vacant posts which are no longer necessary because of efficiencies, you know, and only as a last result would we want to look at making staff redundant. But at the moment, I can't tell you what the shape of that and what it looks like. We have to deliver the AI first, and then each service needs to look at the cost saving, the efficiencies that they've got in terms of and where they can reduce staff. So I hope that answers your question about they're not all going to be going from the contact centre, but at the same time I can't actually tell you where they will be going from, because that needs to be the next phase of the operation. But this process is already underway, so we are confident from the mapping that we will be able to deliver this saving over next year, and then subsequent savings will follow in the years to come. So I hope that answers some of your question, but feel free to ask some more. And I just want to check, Marta, do you want to come in on anything, or maybe give an example of how it might work? That might be good for members' understanding.
Sure, I think you have covered it quite well. In terms of examples, the first of the services or processes that will be going live will be on council tax, so very transactional. What will be automating rule-based, simple transactional processes or part processes that will release time back into the service so that they can focus on more complex activities rather than dealing with simple queries. So like I mentioned, first one going live November, December time on council tax. There's a whole roadmap of activity planned over the next 2 years. So in terms of voice automation, that's what we'll be doing, but there will be a lot more. In terms of your question around digital inclusion, that is very important to us, and we are working on a wider digital business case, which will be delivered early next year. And digital inclusion and accessibility is one of the bigger work streams within it. What we're doing in the meantime is bringing in a number of pilots with a few of our partners at no cost or very little cost to the organization, so that we can do something for the residents right now. But as I've mentioned in the previous meeting, it's really important that we actually engage with residents to understand why they're choosing not to engage with us using digital channels and prefer to either use face-to-face or contact centers channels. Because it will be very easy for us to put in place some of the intervention and spend money on it, only to find out that we've spent money in the wrong places. So it's really, really important to understand why they're not engaging with us using the digital channels, and then put together a plan in place. But to give you some examples on what we're doing right now is we're looking to roll out things like translation services that people can transact with us using their native language if their English isn't good enough, or they're not confident to transact with us in English. And that will be applied to website applications as well as voice channels in the future. We'll be bringing in transcribed solutions, we'll be bringing in neurodiversity support solutions. There'll be a number of solutions that will be rolling out before we even design a wider program, but it is very much on our radar.
I'll try and be brief, and thank you for those comprehensive answers. I remain unconvinced, and I remain unconvinced for a number of reasons. Particularly because it strikes me here that we are putting the cart before the horse. In that you've made reference to the demographic, to the issues of the people who are not tech savvy, and we should be safeguarding their interest first. We should be saying how many people we're going to need to meet them. We should be identifying what percentage of calls coming into our business, what percentage of people are going to need to have a human being as their point of contact, and then we can make sure that we resource them first. And that's our obligation to residents. And it worries me that that isn't at the beginning of this project, it seems to me. It worries me that we can't do simple things. This council has spent a small fortune and then got rid of all the people who did all the work on our own members' services, logging a members' inquiry system. It's a shocking system that is not really fit for purpose. It was widely accepted. We had a committee that set up to look at working it and getting it better. It failed completely, absolutely failed. Our website is shocking. Digital services on there frequently don't work. We fail with a regular basis to update the information that we put on our digital platforms. Literally, we make decisions of policy in this council. We don't update our own website. So we can't do the simple things. Now, that's all incredibly negative, and I hope in every single aspect of that I'm wrong. But I have no confidence that this authority is capable of delivering this £300,000 saving in the next 12 months. And I just, as I say, I commend your bravery, but when it fails, if it fails, I think you've taken a very big risk with something that you're going to have very little control over, if past experience tells us.
Thank you for your question.
Councillor
Spate, I do
can I just, sorry,
understand.
Chair, I'm just going to interject there. I think again, they are valid points, and they are points which have been aired repeatedly, I think, at corporate ONS. I don't think there is any other item that we've discussed so far that has exercised members as much as this. And the point I want to make is all the points that Neil raises are valid, but I think the place to really scrutinise that is, because it will come back, we've asked for it to come back, the place to probe those questions and give that challenge will be at corporate ONS, not this corporate ONS. Our job really is to challenge you on just how confident you are you're going to realise that saving. And I think that challenge has been given. I think we will pick up on that more at an ordinary corporate ONS. What I don't want to do on this item is to get into the merits, and we've all got concerns about digital exclusion and how realistic this is. We'll pick that up outside of the committee. If you want to come back, Councillor O'Donnell, fine, but let's try and focus on the saving and how realistic it is, rather than going into the minutiae of, you know, the other issues around digital exclusion and that kind of thing, which I can assure you we will look at in depth at an ordinary committee.
Thank you. I will try and keep it short, but I would like to offer some reassurance to Councillor Spate that the systems that he's talking about, although they may seem digital to us, they're not automated. They're all, you know, our reporting system goes to a person who has to email another person, and, you know, what we're talking about here is actually automating systems and putting into place smart systems that we hope, as well as being able to deliver this budget saving, will actually result in a better service for our residents, because I absolutely agree with you, our reporting systems at the moment are really difficult to use, you know, and I think this is one of the reasons why people don't engage in them. And members' inquiries is the same. It is not an automated process. It is reliant on human beings all the way through it. So it's not automated. So just to offer you some reassurance that the services that you're talking about, which I agree are less than ideal, are actually not the kind of things that we're proposing in this savings proposal. I don't know if Marta wants to say anything else.
I'm going to take a last question from Councillor Cockshaw, and then I think we'll move on from this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. I just really looking at, obviously, Councillor Bourdain, you've mentioned about how our contact centre sends emails often to chase up service requests, and I appreciate that. The digitalisation of that is really key. I'm just interested to see, like, obviously, cost subject to, on the final line of the proposal, talking about subject to a separate council decision on a full plan digital roadmap. When are we, is that roadmap expected in December, January, or where are we looking? Just a timeline on that to get a rough idea. I'm assuming it's got to be in place before the budget.
I'll ask Marta to give us the timeline.
So that's the business case that I referred to. So New Year, we're hoping to have a first draft January, for the refinements February. So February, March, we're hoping to bring to.
Thank you. I think that does now bring us to the end of the discussion on the slides. I just want to, as I started saying, thank you to everyone who's officers and members who have helped put this together, and cabinet members who have come and presented their particular areas. Thank you to everyone from the ONS committees who have contributed tonight. And of course, thank you to the Democratic Services staff who have worked very hard to convene this meeting and make sure that the other pre-meets and the meetings that nobody else gets to see have all taken place smoothly. We've got a lot to learn from this process this year. It hasn't been ideal. We've heard a lot of comments and criticisms tonight, which we do need to learn from. But for the here and now, I just want to thank. We've finished considerably earlier than last year, so I'll take credit for that. But thanks to everybody who's contributed and given some valuable input. I'm afraid that's not quite the end of the meeting, because we've received a number of recommendations tonight, and I'm going to ask Matthew to read them out at breakneck speed. It's only for corporate ONS members to vote on them, so we'll take them individually and have a show of hands on them. as we proceed. So over to you, Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. So the first recommendation I picked up was for Children's Services, which was a report outlining in further detail the business case for CS02 Grange Water's business opportunities be presented to the relevant ONS committee for consideration.
Can we have a show of hands in support of that recommendation? Thank you. So the next one.
The second one was in corporate services, which was that Cabinet consider other revenue generating activities across services with a view to increasing income for the council.
And again, a show of hands for that recommendation.
Okay, and then there were three for place. So the first one was that Cabinet review PLA02 energy management to give assurance and further justification that the proposal will deliver projected savings.
And a show of hands for that one. Thank you. Just a reminder, it is only corporate ONS members who should be voting on these.
Okay.
Next one.
The next one is Cabinet review the feasibility of introducing a 50% reduction in brown bin charges for pensioners, which is PLA09.
And again, show of hands in favour. Any against? 2 against.
And then the third one for place was Cabinet review PLA18, reduction in highways operational maintenance budget to ensure the proposed saving represents an efficiency saving and not a cut to service.
And a show of hands in support of that one. Any against? I don't think so. No.
And there's a
more.
general one that Cabinet take into consideration the comments and suggestions of the ONS committees on other savings proposals as part of its future budget considerations.
Okay, that's a bit more general. What show of hands? Okay, so the last item then is item 6, the work programme, which is in the main agenda. Are there any comments or suggestions in relation to that from corporate ONS members? No, in that case, do we note it? Thank you. Right, that is the close of the meeting. Once again, thank you everyone for your attendance and involvement. Thank you.